Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. Welcome back to day 2. Gonna give it just a moment to get started. And the chat is on if anyone wants to chit chat, greet, welcome everyone. Give it just a moment so everyone can come in from the waiting room. Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Okay, good morning. Looks like most everyone has been able to come in from the wait room. So we're gonna go ahead and get started because we have a very full day. So thank you again for coming back for day 2 of efficiently managing eligibility, need, and family enrollment. I wanna do a really quick run through of who's with us this morning because we just are so grateful and appreciative that they could be here with us. And just in case maybe you joined us via recording yesterday and this is your first time attending live. So I want to thank both CDE and CDSS for sending participants today to help us with the questions, answers, comments, sharing their wonderful expertise. And so from the Department of Education, the EED Policy Office, we have Danielle Davis. Thank you, Danielle, for being here. From CDSS, the Program Integrity and Improvement Unit, coming back with us today, we have Vina Nguyen and Shelly Swift. From Program Quality and Improvement Branch, we have Jonathan Yang back with us today to help us with all our wonderful pilot counties that might be in attendance today. We have Loretta Riga, who is the Alameda County Pilot Manager. Thank you, Loretta, for helping us answer all those pilot questions yesterday. And then we have our very own Andrea Fernandez, who is a past president of Every Child California. And her day job is Vice President of Education at California Children's Academy. So thank you, Andrea, for being here as well. Before we jump in, I turn it over to Christy and Janie. I just really quick want to go over yesterday and just say thank you for the wonderful engagement. The Q&A was going really well. We have the chat open right now for a little bit just so you can say good morning and hello. The Q&A, I think we got to everyone's questions. If we missed anything, please feel free to go ahead and post that question. Again, we really appreciate the opportunity to go down using that tool so we can make sure that we get everyone's questions answered. Something we noticed that would help us answer questions even more efficiently yesterday. Again, just don't forget to post that program that you're operating on or that your question pertains to. If it's a question that goes across both, you certainly don't have to, but particularly nowadays, we got to make sure that we're giving you the right reference, especially because we like to cut and paste the reference point. So, Title V for CDSS and CDE are 2 different chapters now. So we want to make sure we cut and paste the right reference for you. So that would be very helpful. And just like Christy mentioned yesterday, just don't forget to, if possible, include any details you can in your question in case we have to re-reference. Yesterday, got a couple comments after answering a question like, are you sure? I'm not sure where that is, or that's not how we do it. And that's awesome because we're excited to help guide you. But by the time I get to that follow-up question, I was like, oh, I'm not sure which one that's referencing to. So feel free, a couple of people cut and paste. Like, can you clarify this response further? That worked really well because I was like, okay, cool. I know exactly what you're talking about. So these are just little tips and tricks to make sure that we're getting you the info that you need. And then if all else fails at the end of the day, if you hung out yesterday, we stayed on for like an extra 40 minutes just answering any questions that you might have missed. So you're always welcome to hang out after, and then we will hang on as long as we can and go through any comments, any questions you have. So again, wonderful engagement, really appreciate it. So with that, I want to turn it over to Christy and Janie, our wonderful representatives from Monarch Link today, who will be running the presentation. So Christy, are you first today?
I am. So I'm going to be presenting this morning, and then you will get to hear from Janie this afternoon. Sound good? Okay, we're going to jump right in. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video so it's not distracting. So welcome back, everyone. Today, we are going to jump right into continuing to cover the eligibility section, followed by need for services. Again, eligibility applies to all of our programs, and need for services applies to full-day programs. Tomorrow, give me 1 second here. There we go. Tomorrow, for the first part of our day, we will cover family fees, followed by completing the application for services and notice of actions. If you only operate part day state preschool programs, please plan on checking in tomorrow at about 9:30 a.m. We will be covering family fees in the morning, and it will take us at least that first half hour of the day to do so. Just as we did on day one, we will be using the polling feature to check for understanding and the Q&A feature to answer your questions. Note that on the webinar webpage, we have added a PDF of the slides for today's presentation, along with an electronic income calculation worksheet that you will need to download for today's polling. Again, you don't see it on my screen here, but under that box on the webinar page, there's like a little blue turquoise box, and that is our Monarch Links electronic income calculation worksheet. You're welcome to download that, and then we will be using that to check for understanding when we do some income scenarios. I'd also like to point out that the initial eligibility slides we cover in today's training are located within day one. As we are carrying over the content we did not get into yesterday. So I want to say there's like no more than a dozen slides from the end of day one presentation that we are covering this morning. Also note that the day one training video is now available and can be accessed through October 30th. So it's right there where the image is for day one. You will see the recording. And then by tomorrow morning, we will have today's recording up there. Okay, let's jump right into continuing with eligibility. Yesterday, we focused on the duration of services for eligibility, and today we are going to focus on how to verify that eligibility. Verification of eligibility looks different based on the criteria a family is being certified under. Children receiving Child Protective Services, also known by many as CPS, through the County Welfare Department may receive child care and development services if referred directly by a county child welfare services worker. The CPS written referral must be dated within 6 months immediately preceding the date of the application for services and must include very specific information. The referral itself must contain a statement from the local county welfare department, Child Protective Services unit, certifying that the child is receiving child protective services and that child care and development services are a necessary component of the Child Protective Services plan. The name and birth date of each child being referred for service, along with the frequency of needed child care services. That includes the number of days per week and the number of hours per day child care is needed for each child. The probable duration of the Child Protective Service Plan is also required. Note that for full-day programs, if the written referral specifies that it is necessary to exempt the family from paying a fee, then the parent is not required to provide documentation of total countable income. In addition, the name, address, phone number, and signature of the person making the referral is required. Note that this is a lot of information to communicate. All that is required with a CPS social worker. It is ideal to work with your local Child Protective Services unit to develop a standard template for your county, or provide a worker with a sample letter. If you take the time to do this and work with your local Child Protective Services agency, this will save you a lot of back and forth time later on. Okay, let's now review documentation requires for children that are certified as being at risk. The definition for children at risk of abuse, neglect, or exploitation: it's a child that is referred from a legally qualified professional in a legal, medical, or social service agency, a local educational agency liaison for homeless children and youths, a Head Start program, or an emergency shelter may receive childcare and development services. Again, let's walk through our sample at-risk written referral to show what specific information is needed. The written referral must be dated within 6 months immediately preceding the date of application for services, and must contain a statement by a legally qualified professional that states the child is at risk of abuse and neglect, and that child care and development services are needed to reduce or eliminate that risk. The name and birth date of each child referred for service, along with the frequency of needed childcare services. That includes the number of days per week and number of hours per day childcare is needed for each child. In addition, the name, address, phone number, license number, and signature of the person making the referral. The person making the referral must be licensed. It is ideal to work with your local social service agencies to develop a template of what is required, or provide the person making the referral, such as a licensed social worker, with a sample letter. If a child is enrolled in state preschool, again, this is going to only apply to state preschool, under the exceptional needs child eligibility category, the file must contain current exceptional needs documentation, such as an individualized education program, known as an IEP, or individual family service plan, known as an IFSP. As a reminder, 5% of state preschool funded enrollment must be reserved for children with exceptional needs. And only the children in the family who have exceptional needs may be enrolled under this eligibility criteria. Any other child in the family without exceptional needs must meet one of the other eligibility criteria. Now that we've covered what documents are needed to prove the child's eligibility, let's move on to documentation needed for family eligibility, beginning with the homelessness criteria. The state's definition of homelessness aligns with the definition of homeless children that is in the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. The McKinney-Vento Act defines homeless children and youth as children that lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence, and includes one of the following subparts: children who are sharing the housing of other persons due to loss of housing, economic hardship, or a similar reason. are living in motels, hotels, trailer parks, or camping grounds due to the lack of alternative accommodations, are living in emergency or transitional shelters, or are abandoned in hospitals. Children and youths who have a primary nighttime residence that it is a public or private place not designed for or ordinarily used as a regular sleeping accommodation for human beings. Or children and youths who are living in cars, parks, public spaces, abandoned buildings, substandard housing, bus or train stations, or similar settings. Like with everything else, appropriate documentation must be in the family data file that proves that a family meets the qualifications. For homelessness, the regulations state that a family has 2 ways of providing proof for the purpose of eligibility. Either a written referral from an emergency shelter or other legal, medical, or social service agency, or simply a written parental declaration that the family is experiencing homelessness and a statement describing the family's current living situation is acceptable proof. If a family is providing a parent statement as proof of homelessness, it must state that the family is homeless and include a description of the family's current living situation, along with signing under penalty of perjury. Some contractors develop and use a form such as this, a parental declaration of homelessness form. If using a form, of course, make sure the parent includes all of the information along with their signature and date. Our next family eligibility category is current CalWORKS cash aid recipient. If the basis of eligibility is current CalWORKS cash aid recipient, the parent must provide documentation of the cash aid unless the contractor has other means of obtaining verification. Examples of documentation might include a notice of action from the welfare department, receipt of cash aid, or other means such as verification of benefits, which used to be called our passport for services. Please note that documentation should be for the month preceding certification or recertification. Note that some contractors develop a parent handout that includes information on how to access their benefit documentation. For state preschool programs, the next family eligibility category applies to families that are enrolled based on residing within an approved free and reduced price middle school boundary. Proof of eligibility must include current residency verification. For this eligibility criteria, there are specific items that are listed in the Title V regulations that meet this criteria. Utility bill, property tax bill, voter registration, rental or lease agreement with the landlord's information, government agency letter, employment pay stub, or any documentation that a contractor reasonably relies upon to prove that the family resides within that qualifying FRPM school boundary. Note that a contractor must have completed and submitted the applicable state preschool program site verification form prior to enrolling children within this category. And this form can be found on the CDE website. Okay, before we get into income, let's check for understanding regarding these other eligibility categories. Okay, I just launched that poll. We'll give everyone a few minutes. Again, sometimes those polls are hiding in the corner of your screen, but the poll is launched. This one just includes 3 questions. Okay, I'm going to end this poll in just about 15 seconds. Okay, let's go over these. And I just shared the results with you. Retta, our enrollment specialist, is back. She is reviewing a CPS written referral. The referral must be dated within 6 months, 6 months immediately preceding the date of the application for services. So that applies to both our CPS and at-risk written referrals. Number 2, April is reviewing a family data file for a family whose eligibility is based on homelessness. For the purpose of determining eligibility, the documentation on file must indicate, so both of these scenarios, right, meet that homelessness eligibility criteria. Number 3, Stanley submits proof that he received CalWORKs cash aid. The proof of cash aid must be dated within the month preceding certification or recertification. I'm going to repeat that because a lot of folks put other answers. So Stanley submits proof that he receives CalWORKs cash aid. So the proof that he's a current CalWORKs recipient is going to be from the month preceding certification or recertification. Okay, before we move on to income eligibility and also how to calculate income, which we will fold in some of these other, non-wage income types too. I want to check in with our Q&A folks to see if there are any non-income questions that you'd like to cover here live.
Sorry, Christy. I was going to.
No, I know it takes a minute to.
I definitely have a couple things, Janie, while you're sorting. I just want to mention out loud, we're having chat amongst presenters here. So in regard to documentation of exceptional needs, I just want to mention, and Danielle, please chime in if I don't capture this correctly, that the documentation is the presence of the IEP, and for CSPP, for CDE programs, they're going to be sending out a management bulletin shortly, because post July 1st, that need to have the written statement from signature from a qualified professional is going to go away. It is just going to be the presence of the IEP that is exceptional needs qualification. I want to mention that that's going to be an update.
And that's just for our young folks, our CSPP children. That, just for clarification, that does not apply to our children that are like 13 to age 21. I want to say that statement is still staying in the regs, but for our youngins, it's simply the IEP or IFSP. Is that correct, Danielle?
That is correct, yes.
Great, thank you. Thanks for flagging that. So that was something we were talking about. We wanted to make sure we articulated. And then for the CPS, Danielle, Janie, team, did we get that right about, there was a question about the need for a signature, or was it just a statement? I'm sorry, license number from a professional, was it just a statement? Did we need to talk that through, or do we have that correct?
Yes, I think we need to talk that through. So I opened up just to clarify the regulations for both the regulations that apply Title V for CSPP and then for CDSS programs. The license number is not required. It looks like it was, I'm assuming, redacted from there. So we'll go ahead and update our content, but the license number is not required. According to the regulations on there, we still need to include the name. Hold on, I had it written on here. I'm sorry, one moment.
Can I actually ask a question there? So for this CPS referral, and this is more of a conversation with our panelists here.
That's right.
For the CPS referral, that just needs to be on the CPS letterhead. There was never like a licensed requirement there.
Yeah.
Within at risk, it states as one of the type of folks that can write this referral, for at-risk referrals, a licensed professional. And when we go into the definition of licensed professional, that's where we have found the license requirement for those at-risk kiddos in the past. Is that still the same? If so they fall under the licensed professional.
So what I would say to that is what's required of the licensed professional is different than what's required to be in a child's file. So if like that's up to, you know, the licensed professional who's writing the referral to make sure that their license is up to date, et cetera. That requirement is not on contractors to ensure that, you know, they don't have to have that license number. If we come out and monitor, we are not requiring you to have that license number for a CPS referral. As long as you have the things
on the Department of Social Services side.
Well, I'm not from CDSS, so I can't answer to that.
I know, I was going to say if one of them popped on there.
It looks like Shelley is on here.
Yeah, it's the same for CDSS. When we come out to monitor, we just look, is there a written referral? Does it have the name, address, telephone number, and the signature of the legally qualified professional who's making the referral, according to.
Okay, and so the license number is no longer, okay, perfect.
Yeah, Christy, so I went ahead and I just plugged in that regulation in the comment, but it does look like it was updated because it did have, if I recall, it did have license number on there. But it could be where Danielle was talking about potentially where it expands on the licensed professional.
Because I can tell you that regulation has probably not been updated in a very long time. So if it, and we didn't touch it when we added the new state preschool chapter, so like nothing has changed in that regulation for a very, very long time. However, there are different practices, right? Some contractors have asked for it, some have not. However, it's not a requirement of the department to
Beautiful.
Awesome. Thank you, panelists, for discussing that. So I just wanted to bring those up. We appreciate it.
Gets us all on the same page. And that's why we're here today. Anything else regarding non-income questions?
I do. So there is just one clarification that I want to make. I feel like in some of these questions that we're receiving, there is sort of the lines are kind of blurred between CPS at risk and foster children. And just to make it very clear, not all foster children are at risk or receiving child protective services and vice versa, right? So just because a child is a foster child, that doesn't make them prioritized under CPS at risk. They have to have the qualifications of what defines a child for CPS at risk. Otherwise, they're just a foster child that is enrolled under, and they have to have a different eligibility. They have to be either income eligible, they have to meet one of those other eligibility criteria. Being a foster child is not a eligibility criteria. So I just want to make sure that that's abundantly clear for all of our, especially new folks, because I know that can be kind of confusing when you come in there. Is this the same thing? Does it mean the same thing? It doesn't mean the same thing. And it's only when they meet the requirements of what is defined as a child receiving child protective services or at risk. And something else that I know this is a little bit about income, but we did get a question. In the budget this year, there was some language added that what is now non-countable income, and those are foster care payments. So I know that someone had asked a question about CPS payments no longer being countable income. If that CPS payment that you're referring to is a foster care payment, then that is correct. But if it is a different sort of payment, for whatever reason, those are not no longer countable income. That would still be countable income as long as it's not something else that's non-countable income. So just wanted to clarify that.
No, thank you so much. Anything else from our team before we move on to income? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video and jump right in. The most common and complex eligibility category is income eligibility. So we're going to be spending a good amount of time here. To document income eligibility, a parent must provide documentation of their total countable income for all individuals counted in the family size. To help guide us through the process of documenting, followed by how to calculate income, we have seasoned enrollment specialist Retta here to support us. For a guardian or foster parent, only the child and related siblings' income is counted. Based on the regulations for the purpose of income eligibility, when a child and that child's siblings are living in a family that does not include their biological or adoptive parent, such as formal or informal custodial family arrangements or foster care, only the child and related siblings shall be counted to determine family size. So we talked about family size yesterday. The adjusted monthly income of the child and any related siblings, which includes payment specifically for the care and well-being of the child or children that are made payable and received by the adult who lives with and is responsible for the care and welfare of the children, is counted to determine income eligibility. For example, and I see a mistake here on the screen that I'm going to bring up here in a second. Income received to support the child or children might include CalWORKs cash aid, child disability benefits that are not Social Security benefits, child support, survivor benefits. Okay, here we have foster care grants. Foster care grants has moved to non-countable income. So foster care payments have been moved to non-countable income. Or clothing allowance. or any financial assistance received for the care of a child living with an adult who is not the child's biological or adoptive parent. Danielle, can I put you on the spot here for a minute and ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay, and if we don't know it, we can come back to it later.
Okay.
So in the past, for the guardian, which I'm going to get here into a minute, just so the family data file tells the story, we would have our parents submit, or our guardians, foster parents submit like a self-declaration of zero income, just so there's something in there. In the event that they're receiving, if they're only receiving those foster care payments for that child, and that's no longer countable income, they don't need to submit that anymore. Would we just basically put a note in the file stating that the foster parent does not receive any countable income? Are you following me?
Yeah,
so we need something in the file to show that it's countable, or that, you know, the children are income eligible.
Right.
Will we just do a self-declaration?
Self-declaration. So anytime you don't have like documentation, right? So if you're providing non-countable income, you're not going to provide, like, what are you going to get, right? So you would just do a self-certification of income for those families.
Okay. In the event that the guardian submitted like the foster care payments, we could just like note on there like non-countable income, and this is the child's income, but not included on the application for services.
Absolutely. If
that would be
there
okay
are
too.
There are instances where families find it easier to just give you everything and then let you figure it out. And so, like, I mean, that's totally fine. If additional information is in there, it's not a big deal. You just, okay, non-countable income, and it's clear that this is not countable income. It's not. Yeah, there would be no issues with that.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
I don't want to confuse folks, because I know we're kind of in a transition as it relates to the foster care payment. So thank you. Okay, let's look at a scenario. So in this household, we have Tammy and Ron, and they would like to enroll Justin, their grandchild. Justin will be a family of 1. This family data file will only include income documentation for Justin, such as the preceding 30 days of CalWORKS cash aid or child support received by Tammy and Ron to care for Justin. In the event that zero income is received, Retta would ask Tammy or Ron to write out a statement stating that they fully support their grandchild and receive zero income to care for Justin. So this is a sample form that Danielle and I were just talking about. This is like an easy piece to miss. So again, you want your family data file to tell the story. So if the guardian shares with you, we collect zero income, right, to care for our grandchild, or the foster, payment situation. You're going to want to have a system so that there is a self-certification of income, which in this situation will be zero income, that includes a place for that. So here we have that right here where it says zero income, kind of like 3 sections down on this form. Note that for full day programs, a guardian or foster parent's income might be included in the family data file for the purpose of establishing need for service hours, not eligibility. Again, if this is the case, ensure the family data file is very clear. For example, in the file, record need for services at the bottom of the guardian's income documentation to ensure need documentation is separate from eligibility documentation. Next, let's look at what income verification is required if the parent is employed. For starters, the parent must provide a release authorizing the contractor to contact the employer or employers. That includes, to the extent known, the employer's name, address, telephone number, and usual business hours. The regulations are very clear that the release must be specific to the employer. A generic authorization is not sufficient for neither part-day or full-day programs. For example, this simply might be a specific authorization to release employment information form developed by the agency that includes a place for the parent to record their employer's name, address, telephone number, and usual business hours, along with a signed statement of release. For full-day programs, this release is typically located on top of the agency's employment verification form. In addition to the authorization, documentation of income must be provided that may include payroll check stubs, an independently drafted letter from the employer, or other record of wages issued by the employer. For regular and steady income, we are to look at the total countable income from either month of the 2-month window immediately preceding certification. This means that for income eligibility, you will need to collect any 4 weeks of income from either month of the 2-month window immediately preceding certification that benefits the family the most. For example, a family is being certified during the month of April, therefore use any 4 weeks of income from February and March that benefits the family the most. Note that in this example, if a parent provides income from April, that's going to be okay too. Let's look at another scenario. Roy comes to his certification appointment on June 3rd, 2022. Roy is a forklift driver at the local warehouse and consistently works 40 hours per week. Since his income is regular and steady, he brings in income from April. Enrollment specialist Reddick calculates Roy's income to determine his average monthly income. Okay, and Roy could have brought income in for May or a combination of any 4 weeks during April and May. For fluctuating or inconsistent income, additional proof of income is required for a longer period of time. We are to average the parent's income from the preceding 12 months for all fluctuating or inconsistent income types. This includes migrant, agricultural, seasonal, inconsistent, or unstable employment, or self-employment, or intermediate income. Okay, not this July 1st, but the prior July 1st, 2021. This used to be 3 to 12 months. Now this is 12 months for all fluctuating or inconsistent income. For example, Donna comes to her certification appointment on June 30th, 2022. Donna is a substitute teacher. Since her income fluctuates from month to month, she brings income from July 1st through June 30th to her appointment to reflect the preceding 12 months of income. Enrollment specialist Retta adds all of the income for the preceding 12 months together and then divides the total by 12 to determine Donna's average monthly income. In the end, be sure to document how employment income was verified. For example, the bottom of the authorization and/or employment verification form could be used. If the employment verification form was received by email directly from the business, the agency representative could note email, the initials and date. If done by telephone, note telephone, or if the pay stubs are clearly from the agency or business, it's verified by pay stubs. Note that in a few minutes, we will discuss and review how to calculate income. But first, let's look at what information is needed when a parent is self-employed. The regulations state that if a parent is self-employed, the parent shall obtain and provide a combination of documentation necessary to establish current income eligibility from either month of the 2-month window immediately preceding the initial certification or the recertification of eligibility for services. Documentation shall consist of a self-certification of income and as many of the following types of documentation as reasonably necessary to determine income, such as a letter from the source of income, copy of the most recently signed and completed tax return with a statement of current estimated income for tax purposes, or other business records, such as ledgers, receipts, or business logs. Once the self-employment parent has provided proof of income, the regulations state that the contractor shall make a record of independent verification on the cost for services provided by the parent. There are several choices to do this, such as contacting clients or through verifying like a parent's advertisement. If the income cannot be independently verified, assess whether the reported income is reasonable or consistent with community practice for the employment. For example, if a parent sells strawberries or flowers on the side of the road, as an agency representative, I feel 100% comfortable attesting that this is consistent with community practice. I would ask the applicant to complete the self-certification of income form, and I would attest that the reported income is reasonable or consistent with community practice. Both the parent and I, acting as the agency representative, would sign the self-certification of income form. Let's birdwalk for a moment. Knowing what documentation is required for a self-employed parent can be overwhelming, as there are many differences from one business type to another. Let's look at what this might look like in practice. To start, the parent must provide a combination of documentation necessary to establish income, including business revenue and expenses. However, you need to know what to ask for, right? A declaration of self-employment income form is a great source to determine what a parent should provide based on their type of business. Step back and think, for this type of business, what should I request in order to verify if this is a legitimate business? And what records of revenue and expenses are needed? Next, staff must verify documentation provided to ensure that business is legitimate. This may include, but of course not limited to, reviewing a parent's advertisement or if appropriate, maybe their house cleaner contacting clients. And in the final step, staff calculate self-employment income. For regular and steady revenue, take the total revenue minus business expenses from either month of the 2-month window immediately preceding certification. For inconsistent revenue, average the total revenue minus expenses from the preceding 12 months. Big note that a wage draw is not a business expense. So many times we will have their business records and their expense, it says wage draw. This is when a business owner takes funds out of the business for personal use. In addition to employment income, if the parent receives non-wage income, it must also be reported. Be sure to retain copies of non-wage income too. In the event that no documentation is possible, have the parent write out a self-certification of income. Common non-wage incomes might include child support, disability, unemployment, or spousal support. However, there are many different types of non-wage income, some of which are countable, while other types are non-countable. We are going to be reviewing this in the next section, but before we do that, we would like to check for understanding regarding documentation of income. So I am going to start a poll here regarding collecting income. Hey, I just launched that poll again. Sometimes it's hiding in the corner of your screen. This poll has 5 questions, so we'll give everyone a couple minutes to go through those questions. Great interaction with the polls. We're going to give everyone just about 20 more seconds and then we will go through these. Okay, I'm going to end this poll. And I just shared the results, so you should be able to see that on your screen. Number 1, Erin is enrolling her 2 grandchildren into the general child care program. Whose income should she provide at the certification appointment? Okay, again, if it's guardian or foster children, you are going to count the child's income, okay, not the guardian's income. I want to say this is different for Head Start programs. So some folks who operate both Head Start and state programs, sometimes this piece can get a little confusing. For the purpose of state programs, you are only collecting the child's and the child's related siblings for guardianship. In the event that that guardian is receiving 0 income and you're enrolling them as an income eligible child, then you need to have the family data file tell the story and put that self-declaration of 0 income in that file. Number 2, Reddit included a generic authorization to release employment information within the enrollment packet. This will suffice for any program. Okay, that is false. The regulations have very specific pieces of information that needs to be on that authorization to release employment. It can't just be a general authorization, such as what might be in like a parent handbook or on a general form. It needs to be specific to that employer. Number 3, Angela has regular and steady income. Therefore, we are to look at the total countable income for either month of the 2-month window immediately preceding certification. Okay, there's some folks that missed this one, so I'm going to repeat this. Regular and steady income. In July 1st of 2021, last year, this changed, right? It's either month of the 2-month window immediately preceding certification. So any 4 weeks. It's no longer a month of current and ongoing income. That is an old regulation. We don't project income anymore. Okay, so it's either month, any 4 weeks from the 2-month window immediately preceding certification. Number 4, Holly is a day laborer, therefore has fluctuating income. How much income documentation must be provided? Okay, so this is the fluctuating, inconsistent income. That is 12 months of income. Okay, a day laborer, fluctuating income, preceding 12 months. Okay, we have some folks that answered the preceding 3 to 12 months. That is an old rule. It's either regular and steady income from the prior 4 weeks from the prior 2 months, or fluctuating income, which is the preceding 12 months. Parent Toby sells fruit on the side of the road. How would we document income? Toby would document income on a self-certification of income form. Okay, there's a few folks that answered that he would not be eligible for enrollment. That is not the case. He would just need to complete a self-certification of income form. Okay, before we go into reviewing countable and non-countable income and how to calculate income, I would like to check in with our folks. Looks like we have a very active Q&A world. Granted, we are talking about income, so I can see why. Is there any Danielle or Janie or any of our folks from the Department of Social Services or Larita, would you like to chime in?
There are quite a bit of questions still. There's a lot of confusion around what documentation to submit for foster children, and how to document that, what that would look like. So I think it would be a good opportunity to just reiterate, whenever a family is certifying a foster child, for one, you would calculate income for the foster child and any related siblings. And if they have only foster payment, it would end up being zero, but you would document what their income, if they have the foster, a lot of times the foster documentation has that amount on there, and sometimes they haven't received it or whatever it might be, they can self-certify. So you just want to be sure that you document, let the file tell the story, have that supportive documentation in there. But is there anything else anybody wanted to add or expand on regarding that?
Danielle, I see your video on.
Oh, no, I was gonna talk about all the other ones. I think
Yeah,
you guys
go
are handling
for it.
this one fine. Well, is there anything else for this one, for the foster?
No, we are going to talk about foster income again when we get into the non-countable income. And that is a hot topic, I think, because that was just effective on July 1st. So if you're like, what in the heck, when did this happen? That just happened, and so just from this point forward, just move forward. We're not counting foster care payments anymore. Go for it, Danielle.
I just wanted to mention that that's an alignment, correct? DSS and CDE. Just want to give an opportunity because we were just saying for
in
one.
Both the education code and the WIC code as of July 1st.
Yes, and to just offer some clarification, because I had a couple questions. Ed code references the WIC code for definition. So just to add another layer to it, but it does align across. So I just wanted to mention that.
Danielle,
were there some other pieces? I'm sorry, we started yapping.
Oh yeah. No. You're good. You guys are doing great. Keep up the good work. Let me just go to, we got a couple questions on parents with fluctuating income. And so I just wanted to do some little clarifications here. So if a family does not have a full 12 months preceding of income, that's okay. They're going to self-certify for their income for the months that they don't have income. So say that the parent just got a job 6 months ago, but before that they weren't working, but their income fluctuates. So you have to collect 12 months of income. What you're going to do is you're going to take that 6 months of income, and then the family's going to self-certify for all the other 6 months that they didn't have any income. And then you're not going to just average it out between the 6 months. You're going to average it across 12 months, because remember, we're looking at a point in time. And so even though we know that if the family continues working, they would have a higher income later on, that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at their income at the point of time of certification. Did their income for the last 12 months, you would average it over 12 months, regardless of how many months of that they actually worked versus didn't work. So just clarifying that. And then we also got a lot of questions about CalWORK's income. If it's okay if the parent brings the paperwork that was just printed out, or they just got it from the social service office or whatever. It doesn't matter the date that any parent brings in like a parent could get paid or get CalWORKs, or it doesn't matter what date the documentation is actually given to the parent. What matters is if the documentation reflects any time within the 2-month window immediately preceding certification. But I just want to clarify that that could mean up until the day of certification. So if it includes income that they received that day, that's totally fine too. It doesn't mean they have to, go out a week before they certify and start the 2-month window from there. They can do it up until the date they turn in that paperwork for certification, and 2 months from before that date. Hopefully that made sense.
Can I actually show a visual?
Yes,
just if
please.
You said there's a lot of questions with that one. Okay, and I think where the confusion came is probably where we had our example, and then I threw this in there. There we go. Okay, so here in our example, right, we collected income from any 4 weeks from February and March. But know that it's okay if the parent provides income like for April in this example too. So if it's April 15th and they have a check from April, like that's okay. So in a sense, if they're certifying on April 15th, technically they can be giving you income from the past like 2.5 months, right? Because they could be providing for February and March, and then just over those last couple of weeks. This is what you were referring to, Danielle?
Yeah, that's what I was referring to. Sorry, I was reading something else on the other side.
No. There's a lot going on. Okay, would you like to go through anything else? Any more common questions? And really anyone.
While you guys are looking to see if there's any questions, can I just make a note, because we've gotten this question a little bit or a couple times regarding the use of W-2s with 12-month income, you know, whether we can use it or not. And really just to kind of put it in perspective, with the W-2, that's looking at a calendar year's worth of income, so like January to December. Whereas when a family comes in, if they come in September, you're looking at a 12-month proceeding from that point in time back. So it wouldn't capture the correct amount of income at that time. So the W-2 wouldn't work. And really, it would be like, it have to be like the perfect scenario. The stars would have to align, like they come in like January, like where it's like perfect, you know, but that W-2, it looks at a calendar year. So I didn't want to just like blatantly just say like, no, you can't use it, but just to kind of put it in perspective, that calculates a calendar year, and you need to look at 12 months preceding for that fluctuating income scenario.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I do have something to say. So I've gotten a lot of questions about, because I know what was said was use either month of the 2-month window immediately preceding certification of income. And then, you know, do what benefits the family most. The one thing that I'm going to say, I've seen a lot of questions. Well, if the family doesn't have income for 2 of those weeks, but they work 40 hours a week for every other week, can we use those 2 weeks? Or if the family has 0 income for 1 month, but income for the second month, the thing that I would caution contractors about choosing the 0 weeks, 0 months, whatever, is that if the family is actually working, you're going to use that documentation to then determine their need also, if it shows that they have their hours of work. So if you're using 0 income or 0 work, but they have a month where they actually did work and it shows their hours of work, then how are you going to calculate their need, right? So like you have to be really careful about doing that, or making it so that, you know, you're taking those 2 weeks with 0 income and then 2 weeks with 40 income, or 40 hours a week, but you know that they consistently work 40 hours a week. If you're averaging that out, they're only going to get 20 hours for those as their need certification, but they will really need 40 hours per week. So you just have to look at that and determine with the family what the best option is and what you're going to do moving forward, and making sure that the family is getting what they actually need out of it, not just, oh, this is less income, let's use it. But if they're actually needing these hours, we need to make sure that they're getting that when they're getting their need certification. So just as something to pop up there.
Thank you so much.
Hi, this is Vanessa. I just want to piggyback on what she just said. I could not agree with her explanation there. If anything was said, that is 100% correct, because when we come to review, we are looking at the documents you've collected and we're wanting to see that they align. So does it make sense? You know, the income, does it align with the need that you're giving them? So yes, I totally agree with that.
And we had a couple questions too, and I know this is something that Every Child California worked on with CDE and DSS. Does clarification around that income needing to be consecutive or not? And we received clarification at one point from both departments that it does not need to be consecutive. I just want to say it out loud and give an opportunity to anyone present if that is not correct guidance, but our understanding is that's correct.
You are correct.
Thank you, Vanessa. Appreciate it. I seen Danielle nodding. Okay, thank you.
There was one more thing. I saw a question about bonuses and like things like that. Something that we have discussed at CDE. I don't know where CDSS stances on this, but I know at CDE, if you have a family where like a parent works overtime once in a blue moon, and so that happens to be within that 8-week period before recertification, or the 2-month period, if you can find a consistent enough amount of paychecks within that 2-month period where the family does not have any overtime or does not have any regular bonuses or anything that they're getting. If they're receiving regular bonuses, you're going to collect that, right? But if it's like a one-time thing that happens, you know, maybe around the holidays or whatever, but it's not consistent, it doesn't happen multiple times through the year, it doesn't happen every month, it doesn't happen anything like that. If you can get paychecks, pay stubs that don't have that, we are going to say then that's not consistent enough to make it to where you need to collect 12 months of income for that family. If it's like one paycheck within 8 weeks that's happening, that's not a consistent enough to deem a family as inconsistent or irregular payments. So or income. So there's no income fluctuation when that happens. It's only when you're consistently seeing, is it every other week they're getting a bonus, say they work in sales and they get commission, that is something that would be counted as inconsistent income. Hopefully that's clear.
That's perfect.
This is Vanessa. And yes, we look at it the exact same way.
Okay, I think I'm going to jump back. I see a lot of questions still coming in the Q&A room. I am going to jump back to the presentation. Is that sound okay with the group? Okay. Turn off my video so that it's not distracting. So as we are aware, income documentation of all countable income is required. So what is countable income? Countable income is income of individuals counted in the family size that shall be included when calculating the adjusted monthly income for purposes of determining income eligibility. And I'm going to actually read through these here. Countable income may include wages or salary, commissions, overtime, tips, bonuses, gambling or lottery winnings, CalWORKs cash aid, net self-employment income except for wage draws, disability, workers' compensation, spousal support, child support, survivor and retirement benefits, dividends, interest on bonds, income from estates or trusts, net rental income or royalties, maybe rent for a room within the family's residence, financial assistance received for the child or for the care of a child living with an adult who is not the child's biological or adoptive parent, veterans pension, pension or annuities or an inheritance, allowances for housing or automobiles provided as part of compensation, insurance or court settlements for lost wages or punitive damages, net proceeds from sale of property, stocks, inherited property, or any enterprise for gain. So what is non-countable income? Non-countable income is income of individuals counted in the family size that shall be excluded when calculating the adjusted monthly income for purposes of determining income eligibility. Non-countable income includes earnings of a child under 18 years of age, loans, grants, or scholarships to students for educational purposes, federal supplemental assistance program, or women, infants, and children benefits, such as WIC. So that's the CalFresh, SNAP, or SNAP program, and WIC benefits, or really any other food assistance, earned income tax credit, or a tax refund. As of July 1st, and we're going to just reiterate this again, foster care payments are no longer countable income. Relative caregiver funding program and funds from the California Guaranteed Income Pilot Program are now part of non-countable income. Non-countable income also includes GI Bill entitlements, hardship or hazardous duty, hostile fire or immediate danger pay, adoption assistance payments, non-cash assistance or gifts, all income of any individual counted in the family size who is collecting federal supplemental security income benefits, known as SSI, or state supplemental program benefits, SSP, insurance or court settlements, including pain and suffering, and excluding lost wages and punitive damages. Reimbursements for work required expenses that might include uniforms, mileage, or per diem expenses for food and lodging, and the business expenses for self-employed family members. When there is no cash value to the employee, the portion of medical and or dental insurance documented as paid by the employer and included in a parent's gross pay. Disaster relief grants or payments, except for any portion for rental assistance or unemployment. AmeriCorps Volunteers in Service of America, and Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA stipends, room and board, and grants. Beyond excluding the non-countable income we just discussed, the regulations allow for income to be adjusted when a parent is paying out child support. According to the regulations, the definition for adjusted monthly income means the total countable income minus verified child support payments paid by the parents whose child is receiving child development services. For example, when reviewing Ben's wage stubs, Retta notices that there is a wage garnishment taken from Ben's check. She asks what it is for, and Ben shares that he pays $300 in child support each month for his oldest child. She asks Ben to provide written proof that the wage garnishment is for child support. In this example here, Ben's monthly wage of $2,200 is deducted by $300 for the child support he's paying out, making Ben's adjusted monthly income total $1,900. In this next section, we are going to review the importance of accurately determining a parent's frequency of pay, along with using a calculation worksheet. The regulations state that an income calculation worksheet is required. So we included Monarch Link's income calculation worksheet on the web page that you can download. It is in Excel and it already has the formulas built in for you. The worksheet must specify the frequency and amount the payroll check stubs provided by the parent and of all sources of income. The regulations also state that the contractor shall retain copies of the documentation of total countable income. So you're going to attach your proof of income to this in the file. Basically, you need to accurately determine the frequency of pay. This is one of the most common errors, is not accurately determining the frequency of pay. Use an income calculation worksheet and keep copies of the proof of income. Again, for regular and steady income, we are to look at the total countable income from either month of the 2-month window immediately preceding certification. This means that for income eligibility, you will need to collect any 4 weeks of income from either month of the 2-month window immediately preceding certification that benefits the family. For weekly, pay is received once per week. So collect 4 check stubs from the preceding 2 months. If it is necessary to use a formula, as the number of weeks in a month can vary, here is a snippet from our sample calculation worksheet. First, add the 4 pay stubs together. Next, divide the total by 4, which gives us a weekly average. Take the weekly average and multiply this by 52. 52 represents the number of pay periods in a year. Take the year total and divide by 12 months. The quotient will be the monthly total used in determining the parent's wage income. For parents who are paid every 2 weeks, which is a pay cycle of 14 days, then you need 2 check stubs. To easily determine this, you might ask the parent, when are your pay days? Do you get paid every other Friday or on the same dates per month, such as the 5th and 20th of each month? So for every 2 weeks, but every other Friday, it is necessary to use a formula. You're not going to just add those 2 pay stubs together, as the pay periods in a month can vary. First, add the 2 pay stubs together. Next, divide the total by 2, which gives you an average pay period. Take the average and multiply by 26. 26 represents the number of pay periods in a year. Take the year total and divide by 12 months. The quotient will be the monthly total used in determining the parent's income. If paid on the 5th and 20th of every month, the parent has a bi-monthly pay cycle. You will need 2 stubs for the parents who are paid bi-monthly that typically reflect a pay period of 15 days or longer. Note that this is calculated differently than a parent who is paid every 2 weeks. For bi-monthly, the 2 pay stubs are simply added together to determine the monthly total used in determining the parent's income. And finally, for parents who are paid monthly, only one stub is needed. For fluctuating or inconsistent income, additional proof of income is required for a longer period of time. This includes migrant, agricultural, seasonal, inconsistent, or unstable employment, or self-employment, or intermediate income. For these situations, add all of the income for the preceding 12 months together and then divide the total by 12 to determine the average monthly income. As a reminder, be sure to keep good records. This is what Danielle was talking about earlier. In the event that a parent has zero income for a month and no documentation is available, or if they don't have documentation for a particular time period, have the parent self-certify their income for that time period or zero income for the applicable months. And this is just kind of best practice, but what we used to do is we might have multiple self-certification of income forms in our file. So like in this example here, we have 2 months that have zero income. So we would actually have the parent complete 2 of them because we would have all of the income in like chronological order so that that family data file really told the story. Okay. Before we go into, not before, we are going to go into some income scenarios. So we want to check your understanding. Remember, when you're going through these income scenarios, you need some type of income calculation worksheet. We have that on the web page available for you. First scenario that you're going to be trying here. Here's Phyllis and her son Pete. Phyllis is a single parent that receives $625 weekly in wages and $315 in child support per month. Since the frequency of pay is weekly, the parent provided us with 4 wage stubs. And each of the 4 wage stubs, we kept this one very clean, is $625 exactly each week. Using the income worksheet, calculate Phyllis's family's total monthly income. So take a moment to figure out this income scenario. I'm going to launch a poll, and that's where you're going to put your best answer in. Okay, I just launched that poll. It might be hiding in the corner of your screen there. And we are going to give everyone a few moments here to calculate this scenario's income. Okay, we still have lots of activity in our answers here in the poll. So I'm going to just hold off for at least another half a minute. We'll see how it goes. Okay, are we ready to go through this scenario here? So we first entered $625, right up here, 4 times into the income calculation worksheet. And our formula in here automatically added those 4 pay stubs together, divided the total by 4, which gave us our weekly average of $625. Next, we took the weekly average and multiplied it by 52 to represent the number of pay periods in the year, and then divided it by 12 months, calculating the average parent's wage of $2,708.33. Okay, Phyllis also receives $315 in child support. We're going to add that to her wages. In this scenario, the correct answer is the total average gross income is $3,023.33. So when you're calculating this family's income, you would round. In this situation, you'd round down. So the family's income would be reported as $3,023. Okay, we're going to do another scenario, and this one's more complex. It adds a few more layers in there. At recertification, okay, remember that snapshot in time. So Phyllis shares that she married Roy this past year, and they had baby Oscar. In addition, she changed jobs. Phyllis now receives $320 weekly in wages. So she gave us 4 weekly pay stubs that each reflected $320, plus commission that varies. Therefore, she provided you with 12 months of commission. So in this example here, the $10,373 is reflecting the full 12 months of commission. She also receives $315 in child support per month for Pete. Roy is paid every other Friday, like every other, so this is not bi-weekly. And he provided a check for $1,290 and $1,325. Okay, and that's every other week. I'm going to launch the poll using your income worksheet. Please calculate this family's income. Okay, I just launched the poll for this second scenario here. We'll give everyone, not supposed to see that. There we go. We have some fast folks here that already have calculated our answer. There's still a lot of activity in the poll. I know this one is a little bit more complex of a scenario, so we're going to give everyone just another, at least a solid minute to go through that. Okay. So some activity here, and then we are going to actually go through, just like we did the last one, step by step in how we calculated our scenario here. Okay. Okay, so let's look at this one using our income worksheet. First, we went to the Parent A worksheet and we enter mom's $320 per week, which it did the fancy formula out to $1,386.67 per month. Next, mom receives variable commission. She provided us with commission documentation from the past 12 months. Using the supplemental worksheet to compute this, we enter the 12 months commission, which totaled the $10,373. Okay, we divided that by 12, and so that gave us the her monthly average of $864.42, which is brought over to the fluctuating income section of our main worksheet. This brings mom's total average monthly income to $2,566.09. I apologize, that's also including the child support there. Let's look at dad's income. So dad is paid every other Friday, so every 2 weeks. He provided a check for $1,290 and another for $1,325. The formula is computed by adding both of the pay stubs together, dividing it by 2, then multiplying it by 26 and dividing that by 12. Dad's average monthly income totals $2,832.92. The income calculation worksheet brings over dad's income and mom's income, bringing the family's average monthly gross income to reflect $5,399.01, and then we round that down. So for the purpose of this family, it's their average monthly gross income rounded down is $5,399. Great job. Before we conclude the income section, I do want to just point out one more thing for full day programs. Contractors must notify parents who were enrolled as income eligible at the time of initial certification and at recertification of the dollar amount that equals the maximum state median income based on their family size. And contractors must inform the family of the requirement to report within 30 days if their income exceeds this dollar amount. Note that there are 3 different income thresholds based on how the family was enrolled. The family notification would include the threshold that family was enrolled under. For example, if a family is enrolled as income eligible in the California Department of Social Services program, the threshold is 85% of the state median income. On the other hand, if the family is enrolled as income eligible in the California State Preschool Program, depending upon the family's enrollment priority, the threshold would either be 100% of the state median income or 15% above 100% of the state median income. When the parent reports that their income exceeds the exit threshold, this triggers the contractor to recertify the family. The contractor then must redetermine the family's ongoing eligibility for childcare services. If the family is no longer income eligible, then the family must meet one of the other eligibility criteria or be disenrolled. Okay, Adam, could you pop on for a minute?
Yes, of course. Hi, Christy.
We are at kind of a good breaking point, okay. And I haven't read the Q&A because I've been yapping. Do we want to go ahead and take a 10-minute break and then do the Q&A, any live Q&A after the break? Or before?
No, I think that would work well because we're typing some answers now, and then it will allow us panelists to say, hey, let's discuss these ones out loud. And we're getting through them. So thanks everyone for your patience. And then some of them we know we're about to cover. So we're just waiting for a beat until we get to that section. So
because our whole other section is going to be need for services and how to calculate a childcare schedule based off a need. So for our part day programs, if you want to come back after break, we are going to cover a few of the Q&As live. And then at that point, we'll be going into need for services. So, all righty. Can you go ahead and put our fancy clock?
Yes, very fancy. On the way, Christy. Everyone have a
much.
good break, okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and welcome us back from break. And we are going to start with answering some live questions. And so I guess we'll start by asking our wonderful panelists if they have anything they want to elevate. Perhaps I can start while everyone is coming back. So I was seeing, and I'm just going to try to capture a handful here, a lot of questions around individuals asking about particular family arrangements. So maybe temporary guardianship of family members, watching the children, taking care responsibility for the children. And so a lot of individuals asking like whose income they're counting in that situation. And so for those individuals, I responded back with the definition of family, to look back to the definition of family. CDE and CDSS aligns on their definition of family and whose income would be counted in that scenario. So I just wanted to share, that's how I was responding to those. So I don't know if any of our panelists wanted to expand upon that. Any other questions in that realm that you're seeing?
Yeah, Adam, I was looking at the same scenarios that you were mentioning. So thank you.
I'm sorry, Adam, were you talking about foster income in particularly?
No, just income overall. Yeah.
Perfect. Sorry.
But that now I would say, Christy, maybe that would be the next most asked question. So do you want to try to address that maybe in a way that can cover several?
So I think that's, sorry, I cut you off.
No,
So
not at all. Please,
that's kind of like the question of the day right now. And I was typing an answer out right here to Saria. With the new regulations making foster payments non-countable, like off the top of my head, I can't think of any other income at this time that, that foster parent might receive. So I was kind of stepping back and like, okay, what would I do if I was that enrollment specialist? Again, we want to make sure the family data file tells the story. So I would have the foster parent write out a self-attestation that they receive zero countable income for that foster child. And then that would, kind of fill in that gap of determining income eligibility for that foster family, that being the child and the related siblings. Does that sound right? With CDE and CDSS, just have the family data file tell the story, have the parent write out a self-attestation that they receive zero countable income for that foster child.
Sounds good to DSS.
Yeah, I think CDE would say the same thing. And as we are going to put out a management bulletin, we would just leave it to contractors to provide as much information as possible to demonstrate that. And then when we look at updating the regulations to include this as non-countable income, we'll make sure that if there is, after contractors, if whatever we're hearing back from the field, if there is a need to provide more guidance, we will at some point, if that's what we're hearing is needed. But if contractors are able to implement, no issues, when we look at files, it's clear, then there won't be additional guidance. But if we do see that there is a need, we can always come back and provide some.
I did want to talk through, just because I just want to clarify this because I know it can be a little confusing for foster parents. I've had a couple questions on here regarding in scenarios where we have foster parents, but we also collect the foster parents' income. And the reason why you would see a foster parent's like employment income in the file would be to support their need for services if their need is based on the foster parents' employment. So you'd want to make it clear in the file, like for instance, if you have a foster child that's being enrolled, the income for that child would be zero because they receive foster payment, if that's a scenario, but you may have the parents' employment income on file to support their need for services. So I hope I explained that clearly or correctly. I just didn't want to write out a whole lengthy statement on that.
See, oh, sorry, Danielle, were you going to comment?
Oh, no, not on that question. I was just gonna ask another question or answer.
Please,
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay, so something else that sort of related to what Jana just said is that we got some questions about when an employer verifies that a parent works 40 hours a week, it doesn't matter what the pay stubs say, correct? And what I want to point you guys to for state preschool specifically, just state preschool specifically, because that's who I speak for, is that when you're looking at income or a documentation of your need for families, when they are employed, the very first thing in our state preschool regulations, I believe this section was a little altered, so it's important to go back and read it if you are a state preschool contractor. First and foremost, if the parent has an employer, they work, then they're going to provide the two documentation that you're going to want to see before anything else is a pay stub that indicates the days and hours of employment, or pay stubs that indicate the total hours of employment per pay period. For example, like 80 hours per 2 weeks, etc. And as long as the hours generally correlate with the parent's requested number of hours needed each week, then you're good to go on that. Only when the pay stubs do not show the days and hours of employment or the hours total in the pay period and correlate with what the family is asking for, then do you have to get a written independent statement from the employer or telephone the employer to verify the days of employment. That's only required if those pay stubs don't do what they're supposed to do according to the regulations. So I believe that was a little bit altered in the state preschool regulations, and I'm not sure that it was, I know that typically everyone was getting employer verification for every single parent for a long time. And so just as a heads up for state preschool, for your need verification, that is only if the pay stubs do not provide that information. If the pay stubs provide that information, then there's no need to do that anymore. So just wanted to make that clarification.
And I'll just pause to let DSS, did you want to comment from your perspective on that? So I going to take that as alignment for the moment. Oh, hi, Vina.
Correct.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that it's in alignment.
That's great. Thank you. Okay. I want to say, Vanessa, I see you tag maybe a question or two that says you want to answer those live. Did you want to address those right now? And no worries if you're not ready to do so. I noticed you had that in the Q&A.
I have another question to answer live if while we're waiting for Vanessa.
Of course.
Yeah, so another question that I've seen a couple times is if you have a family that has fluctuating income and they only have, say, 5 or 6 months of employment pay stubs, and then you're self-certifying for the remainder of the 12 months, how do you determine like what hours the parent gets? You're going to use the pay stubs that they have. So just because it's a little different when you have 12 months of income, right? Because you're not looking out over the whole 12 months of income and averaging every single month. We obviously recognize, especially with the family with fluctuating income, that some months they may be working way more and some months they would be working less. You're going to do it at with the pay stubs that you actually have and what the parent's current need for it is. So if they have a current need of 40 hours per week, but then you see later, like in their previous pay stubs, maybe they go down to 20 hours a week, or they go up to however many hours a week, then you're gonna note that, but you're gonna go with their current, what they're asking for, as long as their pay stubs show that what they're asking for is reasonable, right? If they're asking for 80 hours a week and they're only working 20 hours a week on all the pay stubs that you have, then that's not a reasonable amount of time, right? But if the pay stubs that you're seeing, they could get up to 40 hours a week, maybe 30 hours a week, and they're requesting 40 hours a week, that would be a reasonable decision to give them that much on their certified schedule. So just to keep that in mind, it's not the entire 12 months that you're looking at, it's what they're currently asking for and what their current need is. And then parents can always, if they need to later on down the road, increase their need, they can always increase their need at a later time and just provide additional documentation.
That's great, Danielle. Thank you. I think Christy, Janie, and I'll just again give CDSS an opportunity if you wanted to add anything to that. And if not, I would turn it back over to Christy and Janie to see where we're at in Q&A. Perhaps we're ready to keep going. So DSS, any other questions or anything you wanted to highlight there?
No, not at this time. And give the opportunity to Vanessa if she's she might have stepped away for a little bit. But if not, then I don't have anything to address at this time. Great job, team. Everything's been answered.
Yeah, thank you so much for both sharing your perspective and your voice on this. It's nice to hear the alignment. Yeah, and Vanessa, if you are back, just chime in anytime. Of course, we can always pause. So with that, Christy, Janie, I think we probably want to jump into need.
All right, sounds good. So I'm going to go ahead and just get us started since need is a pretty hefty section. So within this next section,
Janie, I'm so sorry to throw a pause you there. So we're gonna go into need, so part day services, and then when would the next? Usually we tell them how long we'll be covering this, and then the family fees. So will that be going into tomorrow morning?
You know what? I'm gonna say we might have to move a little bit of content into tomorrow. But I would just say, just to be safe, I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Christy, maybe by like 9:30, 9:45, no later than that.
Yeah, yeah, yes, you're correct. I think that if they have their computers on by 9:30, they for sure will not miss anything. They might have to listen to a little bit about fees, but they won't miss anything for application for services.
Great. So we just want to make sure part day. So if you don't want to join for this portion because it doesn't apply to you, if you join back at 9:30 tomorrow morning, we won't start without you is what we're saying. You might catch the end of some fees, but we won't start to application or services, which is the next portion of the presentation that would apply to you. So that's what we're saying. So if you need to step away, then thank you for being here. And Janie, sorry again for interrupting you. I'm going to turn it back over.
All good, no problem. So like Adam said, we are going to be jumping into family fees, which is a component for families receiving full day services in a state funded program. So documentation of need is another piece of the family data file. And like eligibility and income, it helps tell the story of families who are receiving services in a need-based program. So let's go ahead and dive into that section. Oops, sorry guys. I'm over here jumping around. So documentation of need, like I said, is another piece of the family data file. Based on the program monitoring instrument, the compliance indicator states families with children enrolled have met the need requirements. Certified hours of childcare correspond to the need of the parent or caretaker as documented by the contractor at the initial certification and recertification, or at the voluntary request of the family to increase or decrease the hours of need status. Evidence of compliance includes the review of the family data files to ensure the application for services, along with supporting need for service documentation, accurately reflects the family's verified need for services. In addition, evidence includes the written materials given to parents regarding the need criteria. So to ensure protocols are clear to staff, it is recommended that an agency document strategies used to meet the need compliance indicator for each program type. In our example program planning and monitoring guide for the alternative payment programs, sample strategies to meet the need requirements might include outlining the materials given to parents which might include your participant handbook, agency website, and an application requirements checklist. When a reviewer opens up the parent handbook, you'd want to see, will they find information about the various need criteria, how a child certified schedule is determined, and what to do if a parent chooses to voluntarily request a change to their service level. Another strategy might consist of staff procedures, such as referencing our enrollment specialist training guide, desk reference manual, or enrollment kit that supports staff with understanding the various need criteria requirements, and how to describe a child's schedule, determine a child's schedule once the need documents have been submitted. So does your family data file checklist include a place for all of the need criteria to ensure adults counted in the family size meet at least one of the need criteria? Another strategy might include reference to the part of the participant's interview or meeting procedure. When reviewing the application for services with the parent, is the need information recorded on the application verified against documentation and verbally by the parent? So this is a good opportunity as a check and balance. Did you document everything correctly? And is it in alignment with the support documentations in your file? So let's take a deeper dive into the details of need for services, beginning with going over when to determine need for services. Note that there are a few scenarios where a parent is not required to have a need for services. Parents of children enrolled in a part-day state preschool program are not required to have a need for services. And if a child is enrolled in a full-day state preschool program, after all eligible children have been enrolled, a family may be enrolled with no established need for services. We will be covering this section, and we'll be talking about what this might look like in a program further on in this section. For everyone else seeking full-day services, all parents or caretakers counted in the family size must meet at least one of the need criteria. These criteria include employment, seeking employment, vocational training, engaged in an educational program, seeking permanent housing, homelessness, and incapacitation, along with CPS and at risk. For CalWORK's programs, need criteria also includes welfare to work activities. The regulations state that at initial certification or recertification, contractors must certify services for not less than 12 months, except for state preschool programs that certify services for not less than 24 months. Also, as a reminder, the certification period may be different if you are in a pilot county. So again, you just want to make sure that you follow your county specific requirements to ensure you are in compliance. So this means once a family establishes need, they will remain eligible and receive services until recertification. A family may at any time voluntarily request a change to their service level. Before a contractor may make any changes, the parent must submit a written request with the days and hours per day, effective date of the proposed change, and documentation to support the change. If a parent requests to decrease their days and/or hours of services, you must ensure that the parent acknowledges in writing that they understand they may retain their current service level. And if a parent requests to decrease their days and/or hours of services, they understand the new schedule would replace their current schedule. If the parent chooses to increase their certified schedule at a later time, after that change has been made, the parent will be required to submit additional documentation. So let's go ahead and look at an example of what this might look like. So at initial certification, a parent is certified with 5.5 hours per day, Monday through Friday, based on their employment verification. After 2 months, the parent is promoted to a full-time position. The parent voluntarily submits a written request for additional childcare hours, along with an employment verification to support the request. The contractor then verifies and reassesses the family service level, which results in an increase in the certified days and hours of care. A notice of action is issued within 10 business days, approving an increase in hours to 8 hours per day. The information received may not be used to make any other changes to the service agreement. So now let's go ahead and reverse this example a bit and see what it might look like if maybe they start off with more hours and want to reduce from there. So at initial certification, a parent is certified with 8 hours per day, Monday through Friday, based on their employment verification. After 2 months, their employer has cutbacks and reduces their employees' hours to 5.5 hours per day. At this point, the parent has 2 choices. So they may either choose to keep their originally certified hours of 8 hours per day, or submit a voluntary request to reduce their child's hours of care. In addition, the parent will acknowledge in writing that they understand they may retain their current service level. So if our parent chooses choice 1, then you do nothing. If the parent chooses choice 2, then the parent must submit a voluntary request or written request to reduce their childcare hours. The request includes the acknowledgement that they understand they may retain their current service level, and they understand the new schedule would replace their current schedule. The contractor will then verify and reassess the family service level, which results in a decrease in the certified hours of childcare. A notice of action will be issued within 10 business days, approving the decrease in hours to 5 hours per day. Again, note that absolutely no other changes are made. So let's do a really quick poll to check for understanding within this first section. So you will see it pop up and launch on your screen now, and I'll give folks just a few minutes to go ahead and go through the questions. All right, I'm going to give folks about 10 more seconds. It looks like quite a bit of you have already responded, and then we'll go ahead and go through the responses together. All right, I'm going to end the poll, and you should see the results on your screen. So question number 1. When is enrollment specialist RETA required to collect and determine a parent's need for services? So the correct answer is at the time of certification and recertification. So any other time outside of that window would be at the parent's request. So if the parent requests to make a change, then that's okay. But as the specialist, I am only required to collect and determine a parent's need for services at certification and recertification outside of a parent request. Question number 2, Toby requests to decrease days and/or hours of services. What must you ensure? And great job. The correct answer is Toby must acknowledge in writing that he understands they may keep their current service level. And number 3, Holly voluntarily submits a change in work days. You verify and reassess her service level and, correct answer, great job, issue a notice of action within 10 business days, indicating the change in service level. So you do not want to let that sit on your desk because you will be out of compliance. So I am going to go ahead and keep moving along unless anybody in the background, if you guys need me to pause or expand on anything that we just went over, I will continue going forward. Okay.
I think you can go ahead and go forward. We're just focused on answering all the questions that are coming.
Sounds good, no worries.
And then we will definitely hang out at the end and answer questions live too as needed. Thank you, Ms. Janie.
No problem. So now that we've reviewed when to determine a need for services, let's review, let him get that out of the way, the documentation requirements for each need for services. So children receiving Child Protective Services, also known as CPS, through the County Welfare Department may receive child care and development services if referred directly by a county child welfare service worker. Please note that for full-day programs, a CPS referral meets both the eligibility and need requirements for a child to receive services. The CPS written referral must be dated within 6 months, immediately preceding the date of the application for services, and must include very specific information. The referral must contain a statement from the local county welfare department, Child Protective Services unit certifying that the child is receiving child protective services and that the child care and development services are a necessary component of the Child Protective Services plan. The name and birth date of each child being referred to for service, along with the frequency of needed child care services. That includes the number of days per week and number of the number of hours per day a child needs care for services. Note that for full day programs, if the written referral specifies that it is necessary to exempt the family from paying a family fee, then the parent is not required to provide documentation of total countable income. In addition, the name, address, phone number, and signature of the person making the referral is required. Now let's review documentation requirements for children at risk. Children at risk of abuse, neglect, or exploitation, also referred from a legally qualified professional in a legal, medical, or social services agency, a local educational agency liaison for homeless children and youths, a Head Start program, or an emergency shelter may receive childcare and development services. So let's walk through a sample at-risk referral letter to show what specific information is required. So the written referral must be dated within 6 months as well, immediately preceding the date of the application for services, and must contain a statement by a legally qualified professional that states the child is at risk of abuse and neglect and that the child care and development services are needed to reduce or eliminate that risk. The name and birth date of each child being referred for services, along with the frequency of needed childcare services. That includes the number of days per week and hours per day childcare is needed for each child. In addition, the name, address, phone number, and signature of the person making the referral. So for these referrals, it is ideal to work with your local social service agency to develop a template. It helps alleviate a lot of the burden on the parents and staff to get the child certified sooner instead of going back and forth because some piece or information is missing. You can already have that template made and it ends up helping and speeding up the process of enrollment. Now, as you are aware, childcare services may be used while a parent works. If a parent is employed, the agency must verify the employment. Verification of employment can be done in various ways, such as through reviewing the parent's pay stub, if the actual days and hours are included on the pay stub, which is not always common, but it may. Paycheck stubs that indicate the total hours of employment per pay period may also be used as long as the hours generally correlate with the parent's requested hours. You can also telephone the employer and maintain a record. Okay, sorry about that. You may also have a written statement from the employer, which can be provided, such as an employment verification form completed by the employer. In the end, you will just want to compare the hours between the employment documentation and check stubs. If something varies, then document why. For example, if an employment verification states 40 hours per week and the pay stubs only reflect 20 hours per week, you can contact the employer and ask why there's a discrepancy. If the employer shares with you that now that the parent has childcare, they will be working full-time, then document the conversation. Remember, the end goal is that the family data file tell the family story. So let's look at what this might look like in practice. The top of and remember, this is just an example. So the top of the form is completed by the parent to authorize release of employment information to the contractor. Then this part is completed by the employer. Employers must indicate the wage information and schedule of the employee. So for example, if the employee works a consistent schedule with a pattern, the employer could indicate here the possible work days, number of days, and hours worked per week. The bottom of the employment verification form is used to document how the need and income was verified. So for example, if the employment verification form was received by the agency by fax directly from the company, the agency representative can note that it was received via fax, plug in their initials and the date. If done by telephone, note telephone, or if the pay stubs are clear, like the pay stubs clearly indicate everything on there, then you can just indicate on the form verified via pay stubs. So look at all your documentation as a whole. For parents who work, sleep time may be requested. The allowed sleep time can be equal to the authorized work and travel time between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. For example, if a parent worked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., you could certify care for 8 hours during the day so that the parent may sleep. Please note that sleep time is not automatic and must be requested in writing from the parent. So let's go ahead and review a couple examples to get an idea of how to capture and how to calculate the sleep time schedule and also the total certified schedule. So here we have Ben, who works 10 p.m. through 6 a.m. Sunday through Thursday. When we factor in travel time to Ben's work schedule, which is typically the standard 30 minutes to and 30 minutes from, therefore his need hours are from 9:30 p.m. through 6:30 a.m. Ben's child CC attends Scranton Child Development Center, where the operating hours are from 7:30 a.m. through 5:30 p.m. To determine the maximum number of sleep hours permitted for Ben, we need to determine the total amount of hours that fall between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. In this case, the total time equal to work and travel between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. is 8 hours. Lastly, we identify any work or travel hours that may fall within the center's hours of operation, which in this case, since all work hours and prior to the center opening, it would be 0. In this scenario, the maximum total approved hours of care for sleep time would be 8 hours. Ben submits a written request for CC to attend care from 7:30 through 3:30 p.m. So let me have you try this sleep time, how to calculate sleep time through a scenario. And this one's a little bit trickier just to make it a little funner. Let me launch that poll. And you should see it launch on your screen. So the scenario here is Ben's work schedule is from 2 a.m. through 11 a.m. The center's hours of operation are from 7:30 a.m. through 5:30 p.m. So what are the total daily approved hours of care? So I'll give folks about a minute and then we can walk through the scenario. All right, I'm going to give folks about 30 more seconds because I still see quite a bit of activity and I really want you guys to go ahead and try this example and then we'll go ahead and walk through it together. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And we're going to go ahead and walk through the scenario together. And I'll go ahead and share the results. So we're kind of all over the place, but that's okay. That's how we all learn. We got to try it out first. So, okay, first things first is when we factor in travel time to Ben's work schedule, his need hours start from 1:30 a.m. through 11:30 a.m. So he works from 2 a.m. to 11 a.m. We factor in that travel time. So our need schedule is 1:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. To determine the maximum number of sleep hours permitted for Ben, again, we determine the total amount of hours that fall between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. In this case, the total time equal to work and travel between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. is 4.5 hours. Next, we identify any work or travel hours that fall within the center's hours of operation. So in this scenario, there is a total of 4 hours that fall between the center's hours of operation, which again is from 7:30 a.m. and 11:30 a.m., which is when he's done with his actual shift. And then, or I guess therefore, as we roll it all up, the maximum total approved hours of care would be the 8.5 hours per day, which would allow for CC to attend care from 7:30 a.m. until 4 p.m. So thank you for participating in our scenario. I'm going to go ahead and keep on trucking along, and we're going to go on to self-employment. So if the parent is self-employed, the family data file must contain a declaration of need, including a description of employment and an estimate of days and hours worked per week. Attached to the declaration, there should be support documentation such as an appointment log, client receipts, job logs, mileage logs, a list of clients with contact information, business license, workspace lease, or rental agreement, or any other applicable document. You know, when you're looking at self-employment, is you want to be able to validate, like, yes, this is a self-employment situation. Here's an example of a self-employment form that could be used. It's useful in understanding the applicant's business and can be used to meet the regulation requirements to provide a description of employment. In addition, as stated in the prior slide, supporting documentation must be attached. So for example, an independent contractor such as DoorDash, Uber driver, or an Instacart driver would provide a declaration of self-employment form along with a printout of their online profile showing active, log history report, and payment transactions. The regulations are very clear that if a parent works from home, it must preclude the supervision of that parent's own child. So for example, licensed family childcare home owner and licensed exempt childcare providers are not eligible for subsidized services. Their work does not preclude them from caring for their own children. If the work is in the home of the parent or on the property of the parent must provide justification indicating the type of work requirements, and why their employment at their home address precludes them from caring for their children. Specific childcare needs must be included in the event that the child, in the event that the care that is requested is for a school-age child. In the end, the agency shall determine and document the outcome of the decision. Now, the regulations are also very specific regarding employment work in licensed childcare homes. If a parent is an assistant at a large licensed family daycare home, then they must provide a copy of the large family daycare license, a signed owner statement that the parent is an assistant, proof that the parent's fingerprints are associated with the licensed home, and a pay stub or other proof of payroll deductions by the licensee. Let's talk about travel time a bit before we move on to the next section. Once you have determined the employment or school need hours, you will need to authorize the appropriate travel time. To figure out the maximum drive time you can authorize, divide the work or school hours by 2. Travel time cannot be more than 4 hours a day or 2 hours each way, and no more than the time the child's care from the child's care site to work or school and back. Excuse me. Note that travel time only applies to parents who are working or in school. So these are the only 2 scenarios where you can attach travel time to. And a good rule of thumb is to standardly allow 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after 30 minutes after for travel. So note that this may vary from agency to agency based on location, but anything beyond the standard should be documented clearly in the file. Again, just like we've been noting, is you'd want the file to tell the story. So let's go ahead and do a quick poll just to check for understanding, because this does cover quite a bit of information. Give me just a minute to launch it. Okay, and you should see it pop up on your screen. And again, I'll give folks a few minutes to go ahead and try it, and then we'll go ahead and review the poll questions together. All right, so let me give folks maybe like 10 more seconds to submit their final responses, and then we'll go ahead and review them as a group. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So question number 1, Erin submits documentation for her grandson, Jerry, who is currently under Child Protective Services and has a referral in place. The CPS referral meets both eligibility and need requirements, and this is true. Remember, if the referral captures all of this information that is required, has a child's name, dates of birth, the reason for needing care, all of the good information that's signed by a legally qualified professional, it counts as both eligibility and need requirements. Jerry's CPS referral was completed in March of 2022. If the application date is on October 4th, will the referral still be valid? So correct answer is no. Remember, the referral must be dated within 6 months preceding certification. So in this case, I believe it missed it by like 1 month. So it would not be valid anymore, and we'd have to get an updated one. Number 3, Toby is not required to request sleep time. Sleep time is automatically given to the parent if they work between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And this was a little trick question, but it's false. Toby is required to request sleep time. Sleep time is not automatic, even though we know we have some parents that work graveyard shift or whatever it might be. The parent must request sleep time in order for us to provide a schedule during that time. And, we need to do our due diligence, and we can have that conversation with parents and say, this is the services we can provide, so on and so forth. So it's not automatic. We need to, the parent needs to request that. Number 4, Pam is an assistant for a large licensed family childcare home. What must she submit? And the correct answer is all of the above. So remember, we need to have a copy of the large family daycare license, signed owner statement that the parent is an assistant, proof that Pam's fingerprints are associated with the license, and a pay stub or showing some deductions, that there's deductions from the licensee. So it would be all of the above. All right. If okay, I'm going to go ahead and continue on, unless panelists in the back, if you guys want me to pause.
Adam, did you have something you wanted to share regarding, I believe it was sleep time before we move on?
If you would like to address now, and I'll leave it to the presenters, or if you'd like to address post, several people asked if we could look at scenario 2 sleep time again. I think it would answer some questions. I think we just needed to reiterate the time that the parent works that qualifies for sleep time. So there's just a couple questions around that, but I'll leave it to the presenters if they want to address that, pause and address that now, or with 15 minutes less, if you'd like to get to a different stopping point.
We can go through the questions at the end. That's fine.
Okay.
And we can go back, because that one will take a little bit more time to read through, but we definitely can read through that again. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Christy. We have a little more space since it's a revisit to really discuss it, if you all can just hang tight there. So go ahead, Janie.
All right, sounds good. So let's go ahead and jump into actively seeking employment, and a couple more. Let's see how many more needs we can get through before our time. So like we stated, we can provide services for families so that they may seek employment. Childcare services for the purpose of seeking employment may occur on no more than 5 days per week and for less than 30 hours per week. Documentation of seeking employment shall include a written parental declaration signed under penalty of perjury, stating that the parent is seeking employment. The declaration shall include the parent's general plan to secure, change, or increase employment. Here's a sample request to actively seek employment form. It provides a place for parents to request to actively seek employment and describe their plan to secure, change, or gain employment. When documenting the plan, ensure parents actually write out a plan. You don't want to just have them write out, look for work or looking for work. You want it to be detailed. What is it that they're trying to, like, what is their plan to secure employment? How will it change or increase their employment? You'd want a little bit more detail in there. Now, our programs can also provide childcare services while parents attend a vocational training program. Services are limited to whichever occurs first, either 6 years from the initiation of services for vocational training or 24 units or the equivalent after the attainment of a bachelor's degree. The snapshot in time is only taken at certification and will be good until recertification. Note that service limitations are not applicable to parents who are receiving services from a program operating on a higher educational institution. When a parent is attending a vocational training program and is participating in rehabilitation services through the California Department of Rehabilitation, or when a parent is attending retraining services through the California Employment Department or its contractors due to business closure or mass layoff. Online or televised instructional classes that are unit-bearing from an accredited institution shall count class time as 1 hour a week for each unit. If you log on to the U.S. Department of Education database of accredited training institutions located at ed.gov/accreditation, you can easily verify if the school is accredited. The parent shall provide a copy of the syllabus or other class documentation. It is the contractor's responsibility to determine the days and hours needed per week based on the information provided. When the parent requests study time, the contractor determines the additional hours. So you can approve a maximum of 2 hours per week per academic unit, and on a case-by-case basis, an additional 1 hour per academic unit if the parent provides a declaration signed under penalty of perjury showing that there is an additional study time need for a specific class, or if the parent is in tutoring or attending another requirement for their course. Note that study time for non-unit bearing courses may not exceed the number of class hours per week. So now let's talk about what documentation is required at certification and recertification. So within the sample training verification, you must include the name of the training institution that is providing the training, an electronic printout of the class schedule, or a document that includes the classes the parent is currently enrolled in, the class days and times, and the signature or stamp of the training institution's registrar. Here in the sample, here's our sample training verification form. And in this specific section, the parent documents their basic contact information, along with giving the agency permission to contact their training institution to verify information is needed. In this section, the parent documents the training institution's basic contact information, and then here, if needed, an area for a parent to request their study time. Down in this section, parents are directed to verify their class schedule by either attaching an electronic printout of their course information from the training organization's website, or if they have access to an electronic class schedule, if they don't have access to that electronic schedule, then there's an area available for the registrar's office to verify the student's enrollment and class schedule. Except for most pilot programs, at the time of recertification, documentation of training progress is also required. At recertification, in addition to a training verification form and class schedule, a parent must submit a report card, transcript, or other training records from the most recently completed quarter, semester, or training period. Upon recertification, the parent must verify that they are making adequate progress. This is defined as achievement of a minimum of 2.0 GPA in a graded class, passing 50% of the class requirement in a non-graded program, or meeting the institution standard for making adequate progress. If you find that the parent is not making adequate progress the first time, then you recertify them. If they do not make adequate progress again, the second time the parent will be disenrolled for training days and hours and must have a different need for services. After a 6-month break, they can receive services for training again. So now let's go ahead and review what is required for parents that are engaged in an educational program. Parents engaged in an educational program for English language learner, English as a second language, so ELL or ESL, or a program to attain a high school diploma or general education degree certificate, also known as a GED, which is now referred to in law as a high school equivalency certificate, will meet a qualifying need for early learning and care services. Let's go ahead and talk about what documentation is required at certification and recertification. So documentation must include the name of the institution that is providing the instruction, an electronic printout of the class schedule, or a document that includes the classes the parent is currently enrolled in, the class days and times, and a registration confirmation from the educational program. Childcare service days and hours approved should be based on the number of days and hours supported by the written documentation. And contractors shall include a reasonable number of additional hours for travel and study time, which follow the same guidelines discussed within the vocational training need. You want to ensure the declaration is signed under penalty of perjury if attached additional study time is requested by so you'd want to make sure if the parent wants additional time for study time, you have a declaration signed under penalty of perjury attached to it. So here within our sample, there's an area where they can go ahead and request that. And if additional spaces are needed, they can attach that on the back. As a reminder, travel time cannot be more than 4 hours a day or 2 hours each way, and not more than the time the child from the childcare site to work or school and back. As with vocational training programs, at the time of recertification, documentation of training progress is also required. If you find that the parent is not making adequate progress the first time, you would recertify them. Then if they do not make adequate progress again, the second time the parent will be disenrolled from the educational program, days and hours, and must have a different need for services. After the 6-month break, they can go ahead and receive services for an educational program once again. And I'm going to go ahead, if it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish up seeking permanent housing. And then if we want to go ahead and check in together. The program can also provide services if a family needs time to seek permanent housing for family stability. The parent can may be on a consistent or variable schedule with service for no more than 5 days per week and for less than 30 hours per week. Please note that if the family is in a shelter, services shall be provided while the parent attends appointments or activities that are necessary to comply with the shelter's participation requirements within the certified schedule. Documentation of seeking permanent housing must include a written parental declaration that is signed under penalty of perjury, stating that the parent is seeking permanent housing. The declaration must include a general plan to secure a fixed, regular, and adequate residence. Here we have a sample request and plan to seek permanent housing form. It provides a place for parents to describe their current living situation, when services will be necessary, and general plan to secure a fixed, regular, and adequate residence. So I wanted to go ahead and check in with you guys because we have 4 minutes left. Did you want me to go ahead and finish up or check in?
Yes, please go ahead, because it's go ahead and finish up with the incapacitation and welfare to work activities. Perfect. and then that'll get us through like the documentation.
Perfect. Okay. So homelessness is another need criteria. And just to note, this is different than seeking permanent housing. The regulations state that a family is determined to meet the need requirement for childcare and development services if the family is experiencing homelessness. Documentation must include a referral letter from a legal, medical, or social services agency, a local educational agency liaison for children and youth experiencing homelessness, a Head Start program, or a transitional or emergency shelter. A parental declaration is not to be used to determine need. May not. So you don't use this to determine need for childcare and development services. This is a sample referral letter. The letter must be on the referring entity's letterhead or contractor's form identifying that the family is experiencing homelessness, and must be dated within 3 months prior to the application for services. Services may be approved for no more than 5 days per week and less than 30 hours per week. And if a parent is incapacitated, this can serve as their need for services as well. The definition for parental incapacitation is the temporary or permanent inability of the child's parent or parents to provide care and supervision of their children for any part of the day due to the physical and/or mental health condition. Childcare services provided for an incapacitated parent is limited to 50 hours per week, and you must assess time recommended with the availability of another parent or time child is in school during that time. So here's a sample statement of parental incapacity form. The parent and agency representative complete part 1, and this releases you to contact the doctor for verification of the incapacity. Part 2 is completed by the health professional. The doctor must indicate if the patient has a physical and/or mental health condition. In this area, the doctor must indicate the time and days of the week the parent is unable to care for their child, or if variable, they can indicate that here too. And finally, at the end of the form, the health professional must include their name, business address, telephone number, professional license number, signature of the legally qualified health professional who is rendering the opinion of incapacitation, along with the name of the health organization they are associated with if applicable. And for CalWORKs programs only, participating in welfare to work activities may be a need for services. At the time of enrollment for stage 2 families currently receiving cash aid, the parent must need services because of participation in an approved welfare to work activity or be employed. Please note that the stipulation is that the parent is the one who is receiving cash aid, and there are cases in which children are cash aided and the parent is not participating in welfare to work activities. Any other adult counted in the family size whose income is counted towards stage 2 eligibility must meet one of the other need criteria. Approved welfare to work activities fall into 2 main categories, which include the federal participation welfare to work activities that use TANF funds and state approved welfare to work that use state general funds. So please talk with your program director or supervisor for the name of the activities that are applicable to your CalWORKs program. If the family is no longer receiving aid, the parent and any other adult counted in the family size must meet one of the above criteria as long as the family continues to be otherwise eligible. As a reminder, this would only happen at recertification due to 12-month eligibility, unless the family is voluntarily asking for an adjustment in services. So I'm going to go ahead. That brings us to the conclusion of reviewing the different need criteria for this section.
Thank you so much, Janie. So tomorrow morning, we've gone through like what documentation we've collected. So first thing tomorrow morning, we are going to go through, okay, what do we do with this need documentation? Like, how do we determine a child's schedule And what will that look like on the notice of action and application for services, how to document that. So we will start first thing when we're really fresh with what to do with all this need documentation. At this point, we are going to go into live Q&A. And I would like to see if Janie can move back to our sleep time scenario, the second one.
Okay, the scenario.
And
that
just put it on the last page.
Yeah.
Or actually, do you want to just kind of slowly talk through how we determine the whole thing on that sleep time scenario? So
Yes.
maybe even go back to the first part. And then Adam, did you want her to just read through that one more time? And then if you wanted to add anything to that based off of the questions?
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do that. And then, yeah, I can see if there's any gaps based on the questions we have. And with that pause, as Christy said, we're at noon. So this is bonus time now. So we'd love you all to hang out. And if not, we'll see you at 9 a.m. if you don't have any more questions. And I also just want to thank our panelists for all the wonderful support today before we jump into this. And panelists, equally, if you need to step away, because now you committed this time to us and we really appreciate it. We understand and we welcome you back tomorrow morning. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into bonus question time.
Okay. So sleep time is a fun one because it requires a lot of plotting and writing a lot of the things down. So here we have Ben's work schedule, and he works from 2 a.m. to 11 a.m. So remember, with sleep time, it's any time that falls between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., work and travel time included. So when we factor in travel time with Ben's work schedule, his need hours start from 1:30 a.m. through 11:30 a.m. So we're going to go ahead and calculate that amount that's the total need time that he's working. Next, you determine the maximum number of sleep hours permitted for Ben during that gap in time. So we determine the total amount of hours that fall between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. So in this case, we're going to be looking at that 1:30 a.m. to 6 a.m. Those are the only hours that fall between that 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. window, which equals the 4.5 hours. Okay. Next, we identify any work or travel hours that fall within the center's hours of operation. So in this scenario, the hours of operation are from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. However, his need time ends at 11:30 a.m. So the only hours that fall within that center's hours of operation are from 7:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., which is equal to 4 hours. I had to do the math on my fingers. Sorry, guys. And then therefore, you're going to go ahead and do the maximum total approved hours of care, which would end up being 8.5 hours per day, because you're adding up those allowed sleep time hours, which is a total time equal to work and travel time between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., which is 4.5 hours right here. And then the work and travel hours that fall within the center's hours of operation, which is an additional 4, which gives us a total of 8.5 hours. And assuming maybe somebody's dropping off Ben's child in care at 7:30, from 7:30 to 4 p.m., that gives us the 8.5 hours permitted. Granted, that's what he's requesting for care. Oops, sorry. So do you think there's any questions outside of that? Anything that's still unclear with that scenario? And it does require a lot of writing down. Sorry, Adam.
No, not at all. And while you were talking, I was reading the questions and kind of going check. So from my perspective, I think we answered everyone's these particular sleep time questions. So what I'm going to do is mark those as answered, because Janie just walked through. The questions were about hours of operation and what are the hours for sleep time again, and can we provide within these particular times, and I felt like Janie answered those. So I'm going to mark those as marked, but if you're like, hey, I had a particular one, you didn't quite get it, please go ahead and repost and we'll look at that again.
Yeah. And you know, oftentimes, like even when I was an enrollment specialist, I love to write everything down. I have to physically see it and like plot everything out. So this little scenario chart, you could even semi-replicate it to walk you through what a parent's scenario, like, you know, what the parent's hours would look like if you were to plot it out. It's just one of those things that if you're a visual person, you have to like write it down and get all the things laid out. Okay.
Thank you, Janie. Great advice. So with that, I guess maybe Christy, you've been going through the questions too. Is anything or anyone from our panel is rising to the top? CDE had to step away. DSS, is there anything else you wanted to elevate before we kind of elevate here? Like, oh, we're seeing a lot of this. And then after that, we'll just go through one by one and to make sure we got them all. So is there anything in particular wanted to raise?
I'm really sorry, but I'm not, I was reading when you were just talking right now, so you might have just stated that. Courtney asked regarding scenario 2, what was confusing is travel time must be requested or is it automatically given? Did you just answer Courtney's question right now?
No, I didn't.
Great question.
Okay.
Yeah, so your travel, we can't just automatically give parents sleep time because we have their employment verification, we have their documentation to support their need. So this is like one of those needs above and beyond to what we collect documentation for. So
I'm sorry, Janie. I think she's asking about the travel time, which they just follow the typical travel time rules connected to employment.
Oh, yes, yes. Sorry. I didn't understand.
No, I'm sorry. I don't want to.
And the caveat to that is that not to exceed half of the daily hours authorized for employment to a maximum of 4 hours per day. So travel time to and from the location of the services and the place of employment not to exceed half of the daily hours authorized for employment to a maximum of 4 hours per day.
And then Esperanza just asked if a parent does not want sleep right after work, but just before their next shift, is this acceptable? Absolutely. So again, as Janie was just saying, the parent needs to request their sleep time. And so whatever that might look like, it's really up to the parent. And then you just need to have the employment documentation to back it up for regarding the hours. Margaret just asked, sleep time scenario 2, could the parent request for their care to start at 9 a.m. so that the child could stay until 5:30? Or no, because we have to approve care from the time the parent is at work. So the parent, yes, the parent can request their sleep time. Well, let me look at this. Hold on one sec.
And then
because it falls between the 2 a.m. Yes, the parent can request the sleep time period whenever they would like during that time. So if they want it kind of at the tail end when they go to work, like that's fine too.
But with the understanding that there's
not with the parent schedule. I'm sorry.
Not yet, and that there's not another adult to provide care during that time as well. So that's another caveat.
So I just answered that incorrectly because now I'm looking at this parent schedule, because the parent schedule is for the morning. So you're going to look at that center provider operating hours, which is the 4 hours. And then you're going to add on top of that the sleep time. Okay. Andrea, are there any other questions or any folks from CDSS on here that you'd like to answer live as we go through these?
You hit most of the ones that I was looking at, and I had just pulled up the regs so that I could, patch them in, but I think you got them.
And then I see that we have a couple pilot questions on here. Just so you know, Adam is copying and pasting those over. Miss Loretta had to leave at noon. She had another prior commitment. So she wanted to make sure that we got those questions to her. So if you posted a pilot question, know that that will be answered. I'm assuming probably tomorrow morning, Adam. Well, okay. And we're going to just kind of be quiet here and jump on and forth because we don't want to close the webinar. We want to go make sure that we go through and answer these questions. Is that okay, Adam?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can bring up a couple if I wanted to kind of go a little bit in order and get those more recent sleep time, travel time. So do we have all of those? And if so, we can jump into the kitchen sink. If
the other ones. Okay, sorry.
Andrea, did you have one you wanted to elevate first?
There were no, but just it looks like there's some questions around seeking employment and up to 30 hours versus at least. So let's see, has anything changed giving them only 6 hours a day and no more than 30 hours? You know what, I don't know what program that's for or for what situation. So that one would need some clarification as well.
Well, but I think, are they a pilot county is the first question I'd ask that person.
It doesn't have that information.
Okay. If they're a pilot county, then they need to talk to their pilot person because it is, I want to say it's 32.5 hours for most pilot counties. But for just our typical state programs, like it's been the less than 30 hours for quite some time per week.
And that does include nap time. So I know there was a question about if nap time is included in there, but yes, that is part of those hours that's included.
I had a few questions and I see a few more regarding incapacitation. And I just wanted to clarify, it's been actually, I want to say a few years ago, we used to have to get the diagnosis of a parent and we are no longer allowed to ask for like, it's kind of like, I don't know if it was the diagnosis or like, why the parent, like what are their, what did you say, Andrea?
The specific diagnosis is no longer required, just the need. Why the need for care.
They do need to indicate, do they need to indicate if it's a physical or mental health condition? That's it in general,
That's
just
it.
like check the box, but they are not to indicate like can't lift 50 pounds or whatever that might be. That whole thing like went away. We're no longer doing that.
And a lot of that had to do with the HIPAA requirements. So that's something you really want to look at with your program and that you're not requesting too much information.
Okay. Andrea and Janie, are you okay if I start kind of reading down some of these and then we just, okay.
Let me, can I just
So
flag
Mara,
one to the top, Christy, because I answered it and then they had a follow-up. Is it okay if I just do one real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
So this person was asking me about, so we're looking at need and they're engaged in a vocational training. And we know that vocational training needs to lead directly to a recognized trade, paraprofession, profession as per the regulations. But this individual was asking like, how do you document that or the need to document that? Like, is it a written statement? Do you just jot it down? Like, what is the process?
That's typically just going to be part of your training verification form itself.
Would be best practice.
You wouldn't need to go any further than that. Just have the parent state it on the training verification.
Great, thank you.
Is that what you're asking? Like, where do they put their, just state it on, there's a place for it on the actual training verification form.
Perfect, thank you.
And then Samara had asked, what are the minimum hours required for early Head Start and Head Start? Unfortunately, we just have state contractors here. So I ask that you reach out to your Head Start person unless somebody in this room can answer that. Okay, I do have a question I wanted to kind of talk around with Janie and Andrea. And you too, Adam, if you know the answer. And I think it's just more I'm like overthinking it. So there's a couple questions here. So the parent basically recently started a job. They only have 2 pay stubs. And then before that, there was 0 income, right? There was no, because the first thing I was like, oh, if they received unemployment and so forth. So if they just have 2 pay stubs and then a self-certification of 0 income because they received no other income before those 2 pay stubs, right? Do you just add those 2 pay stubs together because that's their monthly income? Or do you plug into the frequency of pay 0, 0, and then the 2 wage stubs?
I would.
Or do we need to ask possibly one of our CDSS folks or Danielle tomorrow? Because I'm.
Can you repeat? This is Vanessa. Can you repeat that?
Okay. So you have a parent that just started a new job and they do have, steady income. They give you 2 pay stubs. They did not receive unemployment or any other income before that. Because of the whole frequency of pay, right? Do we basically just average those 2 pay stubs do we just add those 2 pay stubs together, or technically do we put like 0 week 1, 0 week 2, and then the 2 pay stubs and do like the whole formula and so forth?
Okay, so based on regulations, the check stubs is just one of the ways to get the information. So honestly, you don't have 4 weeks then, so you can get, obviously you already have the release. They can get information from the employer. They could contact the employer to say, what is the pay going to be? If they don't have that. Okay. So you don't necessarily want to go, it's going to be 0, 0 because they didn't have anything before, because you have other options to be able to gather the information.
So like, for example, we have the employment verification, which states they're going to be paid every other week a certain amount. So we would use that to plug into the formula.
Because it says you can use an independently drafted letter from the employer.
Yes, and so we would verify it, document that we verified it, that is their wages every other week, and plug those numbers into the spreadsheet.
Correct. So you just want to make sure that you don't want to just go, it always has to be check stubs, because the regulations are giving you other options of how to get the information.
It's one of the ways,
even if they haven't, because I know we're not projecting ongoing income anymore. So
but the regulation does say that you can have an independent letter, which means the letter from the employer, or even if you're calling them, they could say, well, this is what they're going to get. So you could base it on what they're saying.
Even though they have not received it yet.
Correct. Because it says, right, the release, and then it says the payroll check stubs or an independent drafted letter from the employer or other record of wages issued by the employer for either of the 2 months, which we know is any 4 weeks within those 2 months, but you have the or and the or and the or. So you wouldn't necessarily go, it's 0, 0 a week, because that's not accurate. So obviously they're getting paid weekly. You can ask, independent is how we look at it.
Okay.
We would not do 0, 0.
And then what we'll do for the group is we'll talk with Danielle had to also leave, and we can use that as go through that as a follow-up question tomorrow too, just so we have information from both CDE and CDSS on that.
And the rationale behind it is that, like, for example, what if you didn't have the check stubs and all we had was the verification of employment with that pay information? That's what we would
Because
use.
the regulations are giving you that as an option, the or
Yes.
option. Yes, we would accept it.
Mhm.
If it had just said check stubs and kind of left it at that, we wouldn't do it. But because they give you that or, then we go, well, if you have this, we'll accept it. And then it has the other or. If you have this, we'll accept it. And again, you have the authorization so that you can always clarify. And then, of course, as you guys have said yesterday, and I heard you today, you know, you want a case note, you want to document it.
Thank you for sharing. And so, like Christy said, a couple people are asking like alignment, and like Christy mentioned CDA to step off. So we'll bring back just to make sure that we're all.
And again, you know, if tomorrow they say something different, we will take it back to make sure we align with, you know, the same way we did, because we all know initially we were going exactly what the regulation said, which is, you know, it's either of the 2 months, because that's what our legal said, and that's not what CDE said. And so we took it back and we hashed it out and we aligned, because we do want to make it easier for the field. We don't want them to go, oh my God, you know, CDE is doing this, CDSS is doing this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it makes it hard for us too, you know, when we go out and we see, you know, they might have 2 different things done 2 different ways. So it's easier on us as well for those of us that go out to monitor to everything that you guys are going over.
Yeah, agreed.
And I just have to say, I have thoroughly enjoyed the presentation, and I'm taking notes. I'm like, oh, I like the way they said that. Yes.
Well, thank you. That's a huge compliment, Vanessa. Thank you.
I think, well, we all need to be on the same page.
Yes, that's our goal.
And so it's very helpful to, you know, I'm actually wasn't really supposed to be on here all this time. So I'm kind of doing this. I need to hear what they're saying, but I have other things I have to do. So that's why we assigned other folks, but I wanted to be on.
Well, thank you.
We appreciate that you are.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we really do. And thank you, Vanessa, for outlining. We always say that this opportunity, and that's why we're so excited to have CD and DSS here, because it's a community building opportunity. And so the things you hear here and learn here, you can engage your consultant and build a relationship with them and say like, hey, I was on this training and we've been doing it this way, and they talked about doing it this way. So we're going to update our policies. And that's an opportunity for you to have a conversation. You have more information now.
Absolutely.
And more, you know, to be able to have that dialogue. And so we hope that you do.
Absolutely. For those who are still on, you know, it really is for all of us to get on the same page if we aren't already. And, you know, just kind of go, oh, that I like, we hadn't thought of that. So, you know, you could do your best, but then, you know, someone else outside your bubble kind of goes, well, what about this? And you go, oh, wow.
We're all in this together, and I love that sentiment. Well, I want to keep going if the panelists are okay. Again, if anyone needs to step away, we totally understand. This is the bonus time, but there's some more questions here. Christy, do you want to keep going a little longer?
Yeah, so I would like to have us just continue going through, because a lot of these are very scenario related. And then if we want to bounce a question off of each other, we can speak up. Does that feel okay?
Sounds good to me.
Unfortunately, some of them are parts of questions, and so I'm not sure what they relate back to. but the ones that I can, I've already started posting answers, so hopefully.
Yeah, a lot of them have to do with the discussion we just had. So I think tomorrow, if we open up with some clarification, maybe like a side by side of the expectation for both departments, it might end up alleviating some of these open questions.
Yeah, that's a great point. So individuals that were saying, hey, what about my particular situation in regard to what was just said? I'm going to mark those as live, and then Janie's point, we'll cover that so we have everyone here.
Christy, one of the questions is where where can people find your sample forms? And I know they were, at least when I checked, they were in the platform, in your Monarch Link sample platform. But if somebody can drop a link to where that would be, they would appreciate that.
You got it. We will just give me a second and I can copy and paste a link. And I'm going to put that in the chat just so I can send it out to everyone. Is that a good way of putting that, Adam? A good place to put that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, that my English is getting jumbly.
While we're answering that, I answered a couple questions here. Leticia had asked previously about the seeking employment and 30 hours or less limitation. She wanted to know if, or Leticia wanted to know if that was a change. I don't believe that's a change since 12-month eligibility rolled out, now 24. I think that's been the same since that moment, since AB 2626. I think that was it, right? I see you nodding, Andrea. Okay, so not a change. Leticia, but if there's a concern you have around that, feel free to email me directly, and then I can kind of walk you through where that, or the origin of that was from.
One of the questions that came up, Adaluz had asked if seeking employment families are now considered part-time scheduled families because they come in less than 30 hours per week. Yes, they are considered part-time. So that one.
And just a reminder for those of you who are hanging with us, we are just going through the questions, and we're posting a citation, or the documentation that's needed. And so when you hear us quiet for a moment, again, this is just extra time that our panel is sharing with us. And then we're going to discuss some of these out loud. Some of them, it's nice because we can just post the documentation for you, which may be helpful as well. So if you hear quiet, that is why. We're just going through to make sure we get them all.
So looking at Title V and the question, can a family request to seek permanent housing for their need for full day services? The regulation says that if the basis of need on the application for services is seeking permanent housing, they can have services. The services shall occur on no more than 5 days per week and for less than 30 hours per week. So that they would be eligible for full day services, but they would not be able to get more than 30 hours per week.
Correct, yeah.
I accidentally marked a couple as live that I meant to type responses to. If you asked a question about, again, where those forms may be at, if you're not, if you, a couple, I noticed one individual said that they were already a Monarch Link member. So go ahead and just write hello@monarchlink.com. I'm going to post that in the chat. And any guidance you need for their website, they'll be very swift to respond to you and help you find exactly what you're doing for it, especially if you already in the system there, that'll be easy for them.
If they're on right now, since we're after, is it appropriate for Janie on her screen just to show folks really quick where that is on the platform visually?
Yeah, absolutely. Please do while we
explain it
continue to
on writing.
answer. Mhm.
Are you there, Janie?
I sure am. Let me end the show and let me bring it up.
And then just go on to pathways and just show on the toolbar up top where those are.
Sorry, guys. I thought I had clicked my camera on. Sorry. All right. Let me. All right, can you see my screen? No?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, I have Ed Code and Title V and WIC all open
All
on my
good.
screen to help individuals. So
It's all good. So
back
all of our
there.
resources can be found here on the banner here. You see resources and all of our forms, anything we've shown in our presentation, you can find here within our forms. You can also search for the forms as well. So pretty neat feature if you haven't been on here.
I'm going to just say this one out loud because it's maybe a little easier than typing. I have one individual here, Esperanza. You're asking, you have, sounds like a parent that is getting their high school diploma online. They also are working. And so you're asking how much need can you approve them for? You can have more than one need. And so you're going to work with that family in essence to outline, you know, what's in the best interest based on those different need criteria. There's more than one there. So I didn't want to just paste all the guidance to all of that. I guess, is there a better way to articulate that, folks, that just you may have more than one need and that's okay.
And sorry, I was like multitasking and I got the tail end of it. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I know Andrea would have told me if I was off.
No worries.
Esperanza, just let us know if we can walk you through those specifics. I didn't want to paste all the guidance there because it's quite a bit, but you would have the need for the online schooling and you have the need for the work. So, and just because they work online, so basically they're working from home, you just look to that guidance as long as it doesn't preclude them from supervising their child, then that work would be eligible. There's some nuances there, so just let us know if we missed any.
Okay.
And just FYI, I lost my keyboard. I don't know what happened to it, so I am only able to answer live.
Okay. No keyboard. Well, let us know you want to answer live and I can mark them for you.
So I'm just going to talk this through because I just want to make sure I don't miss any piece, just as I've been out of the directly operating game for a while. If the family exceeds the state income guidelines but has a child who has exceptional needs, is income still collected? If so, how should it be entered? So we still collect income. This helps tell the family story, helps show that you calculated income, determine their over income. But when you select their eligibility, even though they're income eligible, it'll be okay because their eligibility criteria falls under the exceptional needs, correct?
Well, if it's a full day program, the main reason why you're collecting the income is to determine their if they have a family fee. For part day programs, I don't know if that one child, if that's the only child enrolled is the child in state preschool with exceptional needs. I think that you wouldn't need to collect the income in part day state preschool. Would that be correct, Andrea? It would only be for full day state preschool for the purpose of determining if they have a need.
Okay, cool. You're on mute, Andrea. I don't know if you're commenting.
Sorry. Yes, I agree, Christy. I was just verifying that in the management bulletin. Sorry. But yes, no, not for part day.
Okay, cool.
Just want to know, we got a couple comments that said they appreciated you all sticking around well after to answer questions. So thank you to our wonderful volunteers here who are giving their time to help provide clarity and information to the community. Thank you.
I'm just going to answer this live because it's a little bit easier. Said, I'm sorry I missed the response to my question. If a parent works Thursday night, 10:30 p.m. to 7:30 a.m., but they have Friday off, can they get sleep time, care on Friday? And yes, they can, it's still a need, like they worked between that 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. so they can still get that sleep time that Friday. Okay, for this self-employment question on here, it says parent provided 2021 taxes. She provided business license and business card, and she also provided self-employment verification form, which in the self-employment verification, she is declaring how much she makes and days and hours she works. And I just want to make note, like self-employment is very like one of those like very sticky kind of like it requires a lot of information, and really like as a contractor, you're determining their need, like you have to feel comfortable with what you're collecting. Like, did you collect enough information? And it sounds like this parent has like a lot of the information. So not that I'd be weary to collect a self certification form, but it sounds like they should have been able to provide some type of income documentation. Like I would ask more questions. Do you have any support? Do you have profit loss statement? Do you have pricing? Like, do you have something that shows your pricing detail? Like, what is it, the type of work that they do? I think as contractors, we need to ask more questions and not just resort to the self-certification. But
the self-certification would be only one piece of it. There has to be, you know, like maybe you go to their website and, you know, download the page, or they have like client logs, or some of them even do banking through like an online. So they, you know, their log of how many, you know, what clients they have. So it's a collection of information to show the case, not just one versus another. It would be a accumulation and a paper trail of, and on also a certification from the eligibility specialist that says this is reasonable and true for the field that it is, or the area that they're working at, or what the occupation is. So all of those different things would support, you know, what that income would be. It wouldn't just be a standalone self-declaration.
Correct.
Thank you for being in alignment. I think that question was from UCR individual, and Shelley did answer that in the previous chat. I think it was in regards to a barber being self-employed, that yes, it is a one item as well as some of these other items as well. So thank you for being in alignment with that.
Yes, perfect.
Thank you, Vina.
My goodness, there's 2 questions left.
Oh, I think we already talked about this one, Celia. It was about the exceptional needs. So just one more.
Yes, you can have more than 5% of children enrolled in your program with exceptional needs as categorically eligible. That's fine.
It remains as a category for eligibility. Just
they're eligible. There is no limit on the number of children that can be categorically eligible under as an exceptional needs child. There is no limit there. The 5% is just saying from CDE, like you have to reserve at least 5% of your funded enrollment for children with exceptional needs. Is that it?
That, I mean, I want to like do a special gift for the 80 people.
One more came through.
Oh, it's not gonna. Well, while you're reading, I'll just talk and I'll kind of close this out. We'll answer that last one. The 80 people who stuck around, I wish I had something special, but maybe I'll try to think of something. Virtual fruit basket of sorts. Just a thank you again to our panelists for sticking around extra time. Super grateful for that. And then we have a couple follow-ups that we'll address in the morning. We're going to be we'll be starting with family fees in the morning. Is that right where we left off of the presentation?
No, we're gonna need to
back.
start with, we still have a good little chunk on determining a childcare schedule based off
Oh,
that
thank
new
you.
documentation. Yeah.
Thank you. I
And
apologize.
that's,
So,
to me, that's very, very important.
absolutely.
What we might do, Adam, is shorten some of the family fees to just basically talk about what's needed this year, not in a typical year.
Yeah, that's really important because as we know, we
It's gonna
have
catch up to
both a
time.
hold harmless and no family fee exemption for this year, only for this year though. So like Christy is saying, we still have to report them. So we're going to be talking about how you're going to be reporting those and what you need for this year. So it will be a shorter section than typical. But thank you again to the panelists. Really grateful for the time you have volunteered for us. Thank you for monitoring, for doing all your due diligence to get all the comments and everything into a presentation. With that, we will close and let you go on your day. And I will post this recording as soon as we can. And then we'll see you at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. Please be well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stay
Thank
safe
you.
out there.
Have a good day.
You too.